That's not the screen we want. Hello, everybody. What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Pool Podcast. I am joined by none other than the esteemed Serge from the Electric Bat. You know him. You love him. What's up, Serge?
Pork chop sandwiches.
How you doing, Jeff? What's going on? Good to be here.
Not much. Oh, that reminds me. I got to turn off rewards for our interviews because we don't roll that way with interviews. So today we're talking about commentary. And specifically, we're talking about commentary during the most important element of pinball. It's when you do a tournament stream, and you are by far, hands down, the best commentator on the internet. And I'm saying it right now. There is none other. It's you.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying such nice things, Jeff. They make me deeply uncomfortable, you should know, because I don't know what to do with compliments by my personality. But I do sincerely appreciate that. And I also think about great commentators that I admire, like Steve Bowden and Colin McAlpine, and doing the commentary for the IFPA World Championship just a few weeks ago. And if I could reach a small fraction of what they bring, I will consider that a great achievement.
So you kind of dipped into a little bit of what I was going to ask beforehand, because I talked about in my questions here about where did you pull inspiration from? You've dropped Bowden. Obviously, he's been on the podcast before. He's one of the OGs in terms of doing podcast commentary or tournament podcast or commentary. So is there anybody else that you feel has been a huge inspiration? Because I feel a lot of your style is really your own. And I'm curious kind of what built you to jump into it.
Sure. I would say within pinball, it would be Steve Bowden, Colin McAlpine. I would say Laser Los too. And a lot of top players, when they get in the booth, are excellent because they know the rules already. Some of them are excellent and bring something else. Like, Levy is funny, I think. Or you'll have other people who draw more on the screen. Dalton has played games on screen where he'll draw a layout. Telestrate a layout and ask you to guess what it is. So some people have more like inter-game banter. A few people. And then outside pinball, like you get John Madden, who draws on the screen a lot. But we'll get to it. But I think that's something that's been missing a lot in pinball, is just, trying to explain what's going on.
And being able to describe it in a way that both is interesting and entertaining for what is actually occurring on the field. But before you even do that, you need to know the rules. How do you know all of these rules? I feel like there's not a game on there that you don't know what's going on.
Kind of you to say. It's a mixture of obsession and madness. That helps. But a few things I'd say. One is resources exist, and I shouldn't take credit for it because I get the rules, not magically. I get them by reading up on them or playing games myself. When I approach a game, I try to look at every insert of the game, and I don't consider my job complete until I understand what every insert of the game does. And that's my own personal journey to figure out rules and play through them. But there's also a lot of resources out there, resources that people know. I would say top three are go-to ones would be like Tilt Forums. Which
I know, but rest in peace, man. Tilt Forums is shutting down now.
For modern games, right? There's a Solar Espion, who's that's their chat name. They have a Pinball Primer website, and for me, that's number one, maybe even above Tilt Forums. And then there's the Ode for and that's good for mid games. Tilt Forums good for modern games, and then for classic games, you got OG Bob Matthews Guide, for classics. And then these days, there are also so many new resources out there. Like Colin McAlpine released an AI chatbot called Pinbrain that will one day enslave us all, I assume. But there's also
but it's pinball slavery, so it's okay, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Shout out to Solar Espion, who has done such amazing work. And there's PinProf and PinTips and pinballcards.net and all these other ones. So that's the first thing I'd say is just there are resources. But if you're asking me okay, how do I memorize those resources, right? Well, is that what you're asking me? I shouldn't assume.
I kind of just it's preparation for streaming, right? And you just have all of this. When the Electric Bat puts a new game on the floor, do you go and do the research knowing that this game might come up during a broadcast?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, good question. I know we're probably going to get to this of what do I think is good for pinball commentary, and one of the things is rules knowledge. And I know that's a tough one because I get that not everyone, even within our niche hobby of pinball, obsesses over rules knowledge like I do. Yes. But I'd say, Jeff, there's a lot of a lot that everyone can do here if they plan to commentate. So first things are like, how many games could be streamed today? Is it the entire arcade of 60 games at the Electric Bat, or is it just classics? Are you commentating on a single bat bank at Indisc? Do you know in advance, what bank that is? So if there are like, let's say 5 games that might be potentially streamed while you're doing commentary, and you know that list ahead of time, we're all capable of looking up the rules at those sources I said, and you don't
Yeah.
have to memorize the rules of every game like I tried to do, admittedly. You could just look at the games that are being commentated on. And I think, another hot take I would give there is, or just one hot take, is that I don't think there is anything wrong with commentators looking up rules during the stream. Because I'll tell you what happens instead so often. There'll be, let's say, 3 people in the booth commentating, and none of them will know how to light at a ball. And they'll talk for 5 minutes about their guesses for how to do it, all while ignoring chat that's saying how to do it. And all while just one of the 3 of them could have looked it up on their phone in like 20 seconds or on a laptop even in front of them, in less than a minute or whatever it is.
Sure.
And so I
So
think, I think that you don't have to memorize everything. Sorry, you go.
no, so we're jumping ahead a little bit too, but I also think that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's more to commentating than just rules knowledge in terms of an entertainment factor, because in the end you are putting on a show, right? And a lot of that means that the viewers need to be entertained. And there are, I feel, 2 subsects of pinball people, right? There are the people that are just very dry and want the analytical rules. They want to know and see people perform, and they want to see really excellent pinball performance. And then there's people that jump on because they like kind of the atmosphere of the Electric Bat, the vibe that it provides, the camaraderie between you and Kale. There's a whole section of people that just don't give a shit about the rules. They want to have a good time. How do you appeal to both of these audiences?
Well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, I would say, even I'm going to answer that, but I want to say a little bit of like credit before I say anything further, because I'm already feeling uncomfortable with like taking any credit. Is that I really wouldn't exist in this small niche hobby, without a team of other people, but especially 3 good friends of mine. I have to start with Kale, as you did. He is the ever-present color commentary guy. He produces, he manages the whole stream. He edits clips, which is incredibly time-intensive, labor of love. And he's also the social media visionary that he is. And then there's Rachel, who owns and operates the Electric Bat with Kale and has welcomed me in this pinball journey since the beginning. And she does so many things well that I feel guilty about naming some of them, because I'm sure I'd forget others, and at the expense of naming those ones. And then there's the third one is a shout out to John Schoppel, who's a pillar of the Arizona pinball community, my good friend for nearly 10 years. And it's really through
Absolute
playing with
classics
him.
master, man. This guy
Classics
will
master,
murder
winner of
any
this
classic
World
pinball.
Championships, classics against many youthful people.
Yeah.
And it's because I played with him twice a week for many years now that I've even gained the confidence to talk about any of this hobby. So, just starting off with like that premise of like it's a community job, ultimately of people like that. But I wanted to answer you next of saying like, and I think you touched on this. It's really important with any project, whether it's pinball commentary or anything, to just lay out what the goals are, right? Are you trying to make the most entertaining product out there? And you said that, and you had it as an assumption. And I don't know that it is always an assumption. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I think people stream for different reasons. So is your goal to make the most fun, entertaining stream for your audience? Is your goal to grow that audience and bring people in that don't understand everything that's going on in pinball? Or are you just trying to appeal to the elite players who are tuning in to the most major of tournaments? Are you trying to promote your arcade, your brand? Are you streaming this more for the pinball players in your community instead of the viewing audience? Or are you just doing a tournament stream because you personally enjoy it and you don't care about all the other stuff I just mentioned, and you just want to have a fun time doing
I
it?
see people that pop up their streams that's just like their iPhone hanging over their game just because they want to have their game up on the internet with no intentions of being a streamer or being running tournaments or whatever. And I love that the platform can provide that. It's like people can stream pinball for whatever they want. And I think that it should always be in the back of anybody who's a pinball player or responsible in some way of pinball streaming to help expand the hobby in some capacity, whether it be, just even getting one of your friends into the game. Like we all have to do our part for that. I have to ask before we move on away from rules, though, what do you think is the most difficult game you've had to learn from a rules standpoint? Like, what is the most convoluted, like, heap of rules garbage that has been hard to communicate on stream?
Keeper rules garbage is a strong strong word, but I would say
Convoluted. We'll use that instead.
is any JJP game. I understand them. I know the rules to JJP games, but you can't say that, you can't speak fast enough to say what's going on in them because everything is going on simultaneously in many of their games. And it's on the
Yes.
UI and it's on, it's there, but it defies explanation in a timely fashion because it's all happening simultaneously.
I love your chart that has the like stacking multi-ball like concept of like which manufacturers are like kind of like overload freedom versus like non-freedom when it comes to stacks. I do want to quickly interject though. This is live. We have a whole group of people here. We got Elizabeth Gieske is here hanging out. Again, congratulations and shout out to Transformers, a game that I absolutely love and think is super fun. If you have the opportunity, they're showing up everywhere. They're doing tons of launch parties. It's worth your time. Go check it out. Everyone give a shout out. All the regulars here. YouTube, I see your questions. Wired Altec asked if there's rule guides lies everywhere. Rewind 5 minutes. Serge gave a huge list of amazing resources for checking out rules and rules knowledge. All right, moving on though.
Yeah.
When you're watching somebody play, right, you have kind of an in the moment commentary. And I think that there is like a future commentary and a past commentary, right? You're thinking about things to talk about as their objectives are starting to stack up, right? Maybe there's something you didn't get to talk about that happened in the past. How are you structuring this to try to keep the flow of the stream in a reality where things are constantly new happening, right?
Yeah, I think it's context dependent because it depends on who's the player and how good they are. And what I mean there is, if a player is, I know them to not be the most amazing player, I don't want to hold them to a different standard than, or I should say, I don't want to hold them to a standard that I know that they're not trying to even reach, let's say.
Sure.
Like
terrible players can be entertaining. That's why people watch my stream.
Right. Right. But like when John Choppel is playing, who's a great player, like I'm going to be quite critical of what he's doing because I'm friends with him, first of all, and because I know that he's trying to be the very best he can. Other players are going up, and I'm like, if they're like, they should have just trapped the ball up, and they're playing on the fly. Like if I see them, like they're obviously not being intense pinball competitive players. Maybe I'm going to focus less on how they're playing and focus more on the rules at that time. But if somebody is like, John Choppel is playing like Black Knight, I might talk about the very specifics of, is he going to tap this right side of the cabinet, watch his hand right now, because I know he's going to hit the right side of the cabinet as the ball comes out of the right orbit so that the ball doesn't hit the top of the sling, and then he catches it on the right flipper, and like all of those things. I may not do that with a person who I know is not trying to do that.
Sure.
So, but I do start off with the premise that there is always something to talk about. Pinball has so many things going on that you can talk about the rules, you can talk about the strategy of what they should do within the game, while they're playing it. You can talk about the technique of the player as they're doing it, or you could talk about pinball trivia nonsense and other things if none of that is working. And maybe one more thing is, like a pet peeve of mine, I'll say here, is that when commentators are like, "This is boring," and they themselves are like, "Oh, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. This is boring." First of all, I think that's sad because, like, you should always love what you're doing and be enthusiastic about what you're doing, and hopefully it's a real enthusiasm, and it is for me. But like, I don't believe it is boring. If I see it like Jason Zoller on a classic game and he's doing the exact same thing over and over again, ripping a lit spinner, that is not boring to me. You can make that interesting, or I try to make it. It's interesting to me, so I try to convey why it's interesting to me. How is he achieving that over and over and over again repetition? What is he doing subtly with his hands, with the nudging, with the trapping, with his technique? Is he alley passing? Is he tap passing? How is he getting it to the flipper every time so that he could do that move? And pointing that out is to me just as interesting as game rules. Is that too much of a ramble?
Especially when you're looking at players of that caliber. I mean, there are people that the small nuances is really what kind of separates them from being like a top 1% player versus someone who's, thousands or whatever down the list. I think you really touched on something that what you said, that when you find it interesting, that hopefully the audience does too. And I really think it's the responsibility of a commentator to kind of help navigate kind of the energy. And one thing that I especially love about the way that you commentate, and this also kind of involves Kale as well, is that you have the pacing for how you guys talk about games is very like exciting in a way that doesn't feel like a monotone university lecture versus like an ebb and flow of kind of like, you feel like you're on the journey of excitement of watching stuff go on in the game. Do you think that that's something you like are actively doing, or is this more of a subconscious thing?
Both. It helps to have Kale. You had to be such a great color commentary guy and also producer of what's going on at the time, so I could focus on the game. And we are naturally excited. So on a subconscious level, it is interesting and exciting.
But it comes
to
off
us.
authentic. It doesn't feel fake,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I appreciate that. I think what we're trying to do is, and I mentioned like, what's our goal? Our goal is coming into it. How do we make the most fun, entertaining, engaging stream for a pinball audience and a wider audience that may be watching it and don't know much about pinball and maybe coming into it? And it sounds like an obvious goal, but I don't think everyone always shares that goal. And I think, as an example, I think that you mentioned excitement. I think pinball, the way to stream it, like you have, if your goal is to make it the most exciting entertainment stream for others, you do have to actually put a camera on the commentators
Oh, for sure.
because
I completely agree with that.
And that's because people need to engage and feel that excitement. If I go back to like what's the world's greatest played game, people would ever say of like competitive pinball, most people would say it's Daniele versus Johannes at IFPA 16 in Italy and years ago. And that is an amazing game. And of course, it's to the credit of both Daniela and Johannes and how well they played it. But actually, I think that the reason it resonates, that game, with people so much is because of the excitement on camera of Ray Day and Escher and Kaylee George that were there watching it. And so I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. What is he doing? So when you feel the excitement, because the player, a pinball player, is rarely excited. There's like Walt Wood, maybe Eric Stone, and nobody else. Meaning like players are not excited while they're playing.
Yeah. Well, they're too dialed in. They're so focused on the concern of doing well.
Right.
Those Whopper points, man, you got to get them, right? Got to get them all.
You got to get them right. Which is why, like, if you ever look at like the camera pics of like JJP games, it's like a nice idea in theory, but we all look like serial killers when they take those pictures.
It really is like a lineup.
It's
like a local penitentiary.
Right, because most people, minus Walt Wood and maybe Eric Stone, like don't show their enthusiasm on screen. And so, like, if I was only looking at Johannes in that game, it is an amazing game. But I don't think it's not as interesting to people, that video, without Ray Day, Escher, and Kaylee reacting to it. So anyway,
I think
does that answer you?
Absolutely. And I think something you said, like, I want to sidetrack for a second, like that this extends outside of the commentary too. Like if you're streaming, or if you're a place that is planning on streaming, put a camera on you. And you may feel that that's a scary thing to do at first, but I guarantee that no matter what, there's something about you that is interesting or can be just milked to be an excellent presence so that people can latch onto the stream outside of it just being pinball. Because it really is the people that are keeping you engaged on the stream or on the commentary, and less so the pinball.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I want to go back to saying, like, one of the things people I really respect, of course, and so many of us do in this hobby, is Tom Graff at Fox Cities Pinball, who streams like all the high level tournaments, and I'm super grateful for him.
He must have so many frequent flyer miles. Like, can you imagine? We got to ask him.
Right, and Tom has said before, on stream, that he doesn't do commentator cams because he's trying to make the player and the game the star. And that's his goal, and that's a totally noble goal. And if that's your goal, he's doing it 100% right.
Sure, but look at commentary for every single sports that exists in the history of televised sports. The commentator's place is to help support the star, which is the person doing the activity. And I think that truly that Tom is a personality, whether he wants to admit it or not.
Yeah, I think So I think, like, back to what we said, if you're trying to engage the most audience, I think it's pretty clear that you want people to be invested in the energy of others who are reacting to what's going on.
Completely.
Yeah,
completely. And that's, I think, the skill that needs to be practiced if you are going to commentate. I remember one of the original followers of the channel, Charlie, who was at Arcade Legacy for quite a while, and then was over at in Chicago doing an internship, and then was also starting to do the Pinball Capital commentary. He was terrified to get into the booth at Arcade Legacy. And I remember him talking to me about it. He's just like, I don't think I can do it. And I was just like, man, just hop in. Like, you can do this. And as soon as he did that, he found his own cadence and then started to be able to support the people playing it. He started knowing their names and whatnot. And it really is just getting over that initial hump to be able to give the information about the game. Just don't be afraid. Take the jump. If you're interested in being a commentator, do it. What made you take
I
that jump?
Oh boy, thank you. Well, it was like a year ago, and they were doing the Electric Bat anniversary stream a year plus ago, and Matt and Amy from Aimless Pinball were in town, and they brought their rig and streaming it, and they do such a great job. But they were like, they just weren't. They were playing, I think, partly in the tournament or whatever, and I often don't get to play in tournaments as much as I'd love to. I just have work and other things that like I never can make it on time. I usually have to leave early. Same thing for leagues. Like I usually show up late, round three or whatever, so I just don't
You
get to
hop
play
in
as
for like
much.
interstitial games when the camera's moving between like rigs and stuff.
Yeah, I could do that. I could do that. But I love pinball. So I was around hanging out during that tournament, and so I could just commentate for hours. And I wasn't planning to. I wasn't. I'm not trying to be a pinball personality of any kind or whatever. And Kale had to drag me to do a podcast with him, but I really enjoyed it because the thing I enjoy is after the league night ends, I usually get to hang out late after that, and I'm there with John Champlin. We're talking rules and we're talking about the games and we're obsessing over it. And I just wanted to talk about it more. And it's just a way to talk about it. So obviously in my non-pinball life, nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about and why I'm so obsessed with this thing that a lot of us are so obsessed with. But here it's like an avenue for me to be able to just express everything I care about, and somehow there's a small amount of people who are really interested in that, which is reassuring.
For sure. All right, last question back on commentary. What is harder, a game that you absolutely know nothing about or a game that you know too much about?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think it's just a game I know nothing about. But when I know nothing about it, I guess I would say like I haven't been. The truth is, I don't try to put myself in that situation too much because I know what games could be streamed, and I learn the rules to as many games as I can. So I don't. I don't know, it's not a fair answer, but that's I would probably scare me, and maybe that's what drives me to learn everything is I don't want to be on a stream not knowing what I'm talking about.
Sure. I guess my fear like is if I know so much about a game that I love so much, I think Jaws would be a good example, right? If I was commentating and somebody got on Jaws, I feel like I would just go on a never-ending tirade about the layered rules and all the things that you could do in Jaws instead of pumping the brakes about what's actually occurring in the tournament. So how do you keep from over-explaining rules is I guess more what the question is.
Yeah, and I probably am guilty of doing that, frankly, sometimes anyway. But I would say that yeah, it's good to know what are the rules, what's the strategy, and then what are tactics. And those are actually three different things. And depending on what's going on in the game, what you want to focus on is might be different. In the moment of a player playing the game, it's usually tactics. What is the player trying to do, and point out what happens as they're doing it. If you can, strategy is taking a step back and saying, what should the player be trying to do, in that moment, not what they are like in the individual moment to moment of the game, but what should they be doing? That's strategy. And maybe
Sure.
rules is to me often before the game is being streamed, and it's just or before the game is starting, and you have a few minutes to go over as many of the rules as possible. And so I think it's like a timing thing and when it feels right in the moment. And I do think those are three different things: kind of all the rules, all the strategy, and the tactics specifically.
Interesting. So I don't want to neglect chat. We have a few excellent questions. Gieske pointed out that TNA was done on Games Done Quick, which was an absolutely amazing broadcast. That was supreme high energy over kind of rules knowledge, but also some rules knowledge because the whole point of Games Done Quick is to try to get an objective done as on a timer as fast as possible. Amazing broadcast. Definitely go back and check it out. Denisi, and I forget the name of the guy who was the host that brought his TNA.
Ryan McQuaid.
I had been watching him. What's that?
Ryan McQuaid. That's
Ryan
the one who
McQuaid,
played
thank
it.
you. Yes. He had been practicing. I had been jumping on his streams as he was getting ready for this, and he had to like put one Powerball in there and like all sorts of other crazy stuff to help build up to the broadcast. It was super awesome. Definitely check that out. No, we haven't done Franchi Part 2 yet. Joe Caravino has an excellent question from Pinball Degenerates. Serge, have you ever considered publishing a pinball rules and strategy guide online or in print? Think about it. The Serge guide. That would be amazing.
Um, there was funny enough. It may not shock people that I used to tutor and like for all sorts of random tests, in sort of like a Kaplan Princeton review variant, and I called it Surge to Success or whatever. And I did, and it was like stuff related to that, to like publishing things. One of the things I found is that because I have a habit of becoming obsessive, like I went a little insane, and it was hundreds of pages, and it took like I was trapped in my room for months doing it, like, and happily, but probably to the detriment of my hygiene or whatever. But I did all of that. And I found that at this point in pinball, I actually think there's a lot of resources that are doing it already very well. And, I mentioned some of them earlier, but like shout out to Solar Espion and Pinball Primer as a good example of one that just has so many things in it already that I don't know that I actually could add that much.
All right, fair. Then I'll ask a follow-up question. I'm very familiar with the On Tilt forum ones, and I love how concise they are. They remind me of like Rec.Games, kind of like old tutorials to get through, like, Nintendo games and stuff like that. What do you think makes an excellent kind of compressed version of the rules that is digestible in the written format?
Well, I was going to give a shout out to Barrels. You did not pay me to do this, Jeff, but
but I will.
I'm going to, but you will later. Which is like the answer is what Barrels is doing on Bon Jovi, which is show the actual, here's the shots with the 3D rendering. Like that's what pinball should be like. If we're up to me, I think the concept of tilt forums is insane, which is these manufacturers are making all these pinball games and not giving you a list of their rules, anywhere. There are
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, they're like
the JJP guideline printout thing that you get is a step in the right direction, but like I feel like that's almost a band-aid to a problem. Like they know their rules are so convoluted that if they didn't include something like that, it would be ridiculous,
Yeah, they have to because of the nature of the complexity of the rules. And I agree. I love a flowchart, and make sure every game has a flowchart as far as I'm concerned for all manufacturers. But also there should be like the encyclopedia area of the rules, right, for people who are really into it. I know it's not everyone, and you could argue that the reason they don't do this is they don't think they have to get sales, and maybe they're right about that, by the way. So I understand it maybe from a business perspective.
Well, I think that more than that, perhaps, it's because when the games are released, the rule sets are in a state of flux. I mean, I'll use Bon as an example right here behind me. And this game's rule set at launch was not nearly as what it is now. MXV was on the podcast and is such a humble guy, would not take credit for the fact that the game is amazing now. It was, of course, a team effort, but you can't do a rule sheet until the rules are really locked in, especially if it's going to be printed, because you can't go back and change that. So you really need to be able to lock it in to a point where it's like complete, right?
I'm not saying to make a printout and then hand it with the game in the coin box, although that would be nice.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is like, and maybe you actually can do that with a flow chart, because sometimes JGP already has their chart, their code structure roughly in mind.
For sure.
But what I'm saying is a website on Stern's page that shows you every game and what the rules are. And I know that some people could point out what exists, and there are some things that kind of exist to what I'm saying, but not really. I'm saying even the ones that you might point out for those like really deep in this hobby and point out Stern actually does have this PDF on this game or that game. Even if you look at those PDFs, that's not what I'm talking about.
No, but like a game guide built into the website. I love that idea. That's such a no-brainer.
A game guide built into the website. These are the rules of the game. This is what this mode scores. This is what this shot scores. This is like everything. And frankly, like they must commentate on their code, on their own code, or comment on their own code or whatever. Like sure. I want that. I want that. Will I get that? No, but that's what I want.
Yeah. D2 the Doug pointed out too that a QR code on the screen could also go to a flowchart too. That way you can have like the active rules on your phone while you're playing, or if you're in line to play. Joshua Clay is here also, and just in time for your shout out about how the tutorials are there. He was responsible for the tutorial videos on Bon Jovi, so excellent timing on that.
Those are the best tutorial videos that have been done so far in pinball. Because there have been some interesting attempts. We could go into like the history there, but like that's how to do it.
Yeah. Just something, Zephonic mentioned here too. He's like living documents. We all have phones and computers, make it interactive. I have to agree with that. Like, I think that the nature of the hobby is a physical collection thing, right? There's an art and antiquity to it that like having like an actual manual or document that has these rules in it, it just fits really well with it. I think back to like, gold box era of like D&D video games, right? Where getting the thing was part of the experience and going through the artwork with it, or even like album collection back when CD sales or records had like stuff that came with it as the whole package deal. Like,
Yeah,
it's just the product
I agree.
now, and I feel that's not the complete experience.
Despite being pinball being such like a niche hobby, it brings out so many interesting character types, like super creatives like yourself, and then it
Wow.
also there's no shortage of math teachers that are into pinball. Like I can name them famous players, famous rules designers, or whatever.
Sure.
Lots of math teachers and math PhDs or whatever, and I know they're just like they would love a big rules chart with
Bowen
everything on it.
Cairns comes to mind.
Right. Indeed. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think rules are important for to know. We talked about how we would know them, but we should like we also talked here about in an ideal world how we should have the rules, and that's the way it should be.
So we're talking about how to make rules and stuff digestible. I have a whole section here of questions talking about making pinball watchable. How
Yeah.
you've got someone who's never played pinball that just jumps on the electric bat stream, right? Maybe they're going to their foot fetish site, but they clicked on the wrong link and it went to the electric bat Twitch page, right?
Right.
Boom.
This
How do
audience,
you
I assume.
how do you get them in? Like what's the easy way to get somebody interested in pinball with just a few words?
Yeah, although I'll never give you just a few words on it, but in the answer to this question, but you're right that it should be a few words while they're watching. Um, like you said, that's our goal with Kale and I on the stream is that to make it as watchable for as wide of an audience as possible that way. Now, one thing I think people make the mistake of is they think they have to dumb it down, that people don't want to understand the intricacies of it. But I actually think it's the intricacies that draw attraction to it. If you look at like the Kale's Instagram account and what he's doing, and this is a good place to preface before we get into like the specifics that I will answer you with, is like right now on Kale's Instagram account, he's getting millions of views on these electric bat, tournament clips. And to my knowledge, as like a pinball obsessive, that has never been done before in pinball. There are clips that have millions of views, but it's not tournament clips. It's like let's have the slow mo guys do a pinball video on YouTube, or Linus Tech Tips do something.
Right.
Like I get you can get artificially
The
views
like
that. I mean,
obvious
that's not
plugs where
artificial,
they're
but
trying to like grow pinball, but it's done through this like they clearly sent us a pinball machine to help feature it to try to grow pinball. It's not like authentically
exactly.
organic. Yeah.
It's not authentically organic. And what Kale is doing is taking not just pinball, but tournament pinball. And it's not the top tournaments in the country and the world. It's not the IFPA World Championships or whatever. They're great players, but it's like local tournaments. And he's getting millions of views on them. And that has never been done before. And so I think it is worth, although we'll talk about my commentary part of it about it. I'm a small cog in Kale's machinery, and Kale is a small cog in Rachel's machinery. That's how I think about it. But it's worth saying how has he achieved that? And I think that's a noble thing to achieve, not just because views and like cares about social media and all of that. Like I don't care about that. But what I mean is I care about pinball and I want to grow
Sure.
pinball. And I think and I swear I'm going to get to your question, Jeff. But if I could take a digression on my way from
Digress.
your
That's what
question.
the whole podcast is for. Digress away.
We're all here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm wearing my
We're all
electric
here
bat
talking about,
shirt.
yeah, I'm wearing that one. And you know what I have underneath here
Circle jerk.
for you, just for you here? Wait.
What is this?
I have
You're double layered.
underneath.
You got a raven underneath. I
double
know that
layered.
shirt.
I've got a raven underneath in case the time called for it. And maybe that was the time.
Give me 10 seconds just because I saw Rachel Bess in the chat and I wanted to take a second to point out because we're talking about the bat, we're talking about art. Not only is Rachel Bess a fantastic artist, but she sent me a candle pyramid with the electric bat wax stamped into it. And it is by far one of the most awesome pyramid related gifts that I've ever received. And I get a handful. I'm not going to lie. But this one is like the creme de la creme. I just wanted to give her a shout out because, yeah, part of the crew and has done so much work for the bat and keeping it running. Anyways, continue.
Here. That's right. Yeah, so I wanted to say about, and I swear I'm going to get to your goal of like, how do you make it watchable? But first, what I would say is not just pinball watchable, but tournament pinball watchable. I know that tournament pinball is a small niche within the small niche of the pinball hobby itself. And perhaps it will likely remain that. And I know that most pinball machine buyers today are home collectors, and the majority, even of those players who buy machines in their basement, have never even heard of tournament pinball. And the way that manufacturers are trying to grow the hobby now is primarily through growing that home collector, market directly. They try to make exciting themes and with cool trailers. They get popular YouTube channels, like we mentioned, like Linus Tech Tips or the Slow Mo guys,
Yeah.
to make a video about their game. And I agree that if you want to grow pinball by 5 or 10 or 20%, manufacturers need to get good licenses and make great games and do all those things. But if you want to grow pinball by 1,000%, by 10,000%, and I know how unlikely that is to happen, but if you want to do that, if your goal is just huge growth of pinball, not 5 or 10 or 20%, then the way you do it is by making pinball tournaments more engaging to a wider audience. If you take baseball, without the MLB, Major League Baseball, baseball does not become a national pastime. Without competitive baseball, it would go the way of stickball, a fun game sometimes played by a few kids in an alley in Brooklyn 80 years ago.
Sure.
And so I'm interested in making tournament pinball a larger sport, more watchable to others. I get how unlikely that is, but it, to me, is actually the only way to grow the hobby by more than 20%. And I do think that there is a scientific answer, we can get to it, to making competitive pinball more popular. And so I think and that's what maybe we'll jump into next, but I'll pause there. Do you hate that?
So it's funny, Nucci said, I hope the Ocho wises up. I have a whole section talking about ESPN. It's right at the bottom, so we might have to bump that up a little bit in order to get into it. So
okay, well, yeah,
let's talk about what ESPN the Ocho is. Because the Ocho, I don't watch a lot of sports, but I have been in Vegas very drunk late at night, and when you put on the TV, there's a lot of weird shit on there. One of the things that is on there is ESPN the Ocho, and it has things like did you know there's a sport where you throw a football on a roof and it rolls off and you have to catch it, and you get point modifiers by hitting air vents and shit on the roof. So now I'm not trying to invalidate this sport, but there's not something very respectable about being on the Ocho. It is a lost era of sports that are basically unwanted on the main avenues of it. And I'm not saying that pinball isn't that, because I understand that people think of pinball, they're like, what is this? It's not a real sport or whatever. So how do you get people to understand that there is skill and complexity involved in something like this, as well as growing it in the way that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think for me, actually, there is a scientific answer to that. If there was or somewhat scientific answer, there was a sports historian named John Thorne who actually did try to analyze what are the essential ingredients that facilitate the growth of a localized game into a national sport, which I know is ludicrous to say. How can we even talk about pinball like that? But you know what? We got to aim high. We got to think big.
Of course.
So he would say there's 3 ingredients. One is publicity. You need regular coverage to extend that passion at a single tournament to those who want to maybe learn about it afterwards. Media helps spread that excitement past the immediate arena that it's happening in, past the tournament area. And so the publicity part is what we have been, and what we still should, there's more to talk about it, have been talking about today. I think Kale cracked the code there to get hundreds of thousands or even millions of views on tournament
Sure,
videos.
but to be on television, you need 2 things. You need sponsors and you need advertisers. And there's no way that that's going to happen from a hobby that has no major sponsor, Look, there are places like Marco Specialties, of course, Pinball Life. Like, there are pinball-centric stuff that do a lot for the hobby. Like Marco Specialties, if you don't know, pays to have the homebrew games shipped to like most locations so that people can experience homebrew community stuff. Like, they do a lot to help push pinball, but it's inside of the bubble that is already inside of a bubble, right? So
Yep, I agree.
What's pinball's first major sponsor? Spindrift?
Before you get
the beverage of pinball? Sorry.
Sponsorship, for me, the sponsorship comes after you get the engagement. And I mean, that sounds obvious, but we have to get the engagement to millions of views, like Kale's done on his channel or whatever, and we have to get that widely and more widely. And I think there's ways to get that, and we should talk, we could dive down either now or later into, okay, so what are those things that have generated so much interest? And let's be specific about it when it comes to focusing on the game and bringing enthusiasm and telestrating and focusing on best players and explaining what they're doing. And we should get into all of that. But the second thing I would say is the surprising one when we were talking about like three ingredients really that turns things into a national, from a local game to a national sport. So one is the media, two is statistics. So numbers give fans a way to measure skill, compare eras, fuel
Sure.
ongoing debates, long after the game ends. And if you thought about, like, you take baseball in the late 1800s, newspapers would write box scores and league standings. And as they did
Yeah.
that, people would like get into it and follow it, and they'd sell more newspapers that way.
And
And I
the
know we're
pinball's
not
all
talking
about
about
numbers. You can
newspapers
do points
anymore.
per minutes. You can do high scores. You can do,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, Jesus.
So recently, for example, Rachel posted in Electric Bat Discord, which everyone should join, has hundreds of members, and it's a lot of fun. But she posted like top 10 players that have played the most games in tournaments this past year. Like, and the number was like 10,000 for the first player, and the second player like 8,000. And it was just interesting to talk about that.
Sure.
So with one of the nice things you could do with AI, and that I'm going to intend to do this in the next few months, is to use AI to take all the information from match play, from IFPA, from past streams, collect all that data, and automatically show interesting statistics as players are up and playing games. So when a player walks up, player John walks up, and we say, "This is John's seventh league finals in a row," or we can say, "This Jaws game, the 50th percentile, the average score is like 40 million points. The 90th percentile is like 170 million points," and just show like a spectrum of, here's where all the points are, and give people something to understand while they're watching it. And what would make a good game? What's a good score? What should they expect?
Do that. Tag every major arcade and me. Let's start like getting that like monthly, weekly. Like I feel like a unified kind of social media front is what helps put stuff in front of people. And those kind of posts, just seeing statistics and graphs. I mean, I know you love charts. You love charts.
Right. Numbers
and
enable
I think
stories.
yeah. And then even if people are on that list, it's a conversation. Maybe it's somebody in the league that is on the arcade that is being shared.
Right. People care
You know,
that Cal Ripken played thousands of games in a row or whatever, and
right.
then like, and they only care about that because you told them that he played thousands of games in a row. Is he going to continue playing? That sort of thing. And so getting people up and showing them interesting. This is his eighth game. He's won 7 out of 8 games on this. Do you think he's going to win now? And all that. So like, I know numbers can be boring by themselves. They are. But numbers can enable stories, and people want stories to invest themselves in.
Right.
So
people, we should get
yeah.
playing cards for players. Serge, you should have a commentator card.
I'll get out of here with that.
Like baseball card, but for you.
Yeah, exactly. That root for the underdog. Yeah, this person, you could even estimate, has a 33% chance of winning this game, but are they going to win? You can root for the underdog, make a story out of it, and the numbers enable that sort of stories. It's why, and baseball is not as popular anymore, I know, compared to other sports, but like baseball is known for having commentators say, this is a random statistic about this. This is his third time up on this, doing a hit bunting or whatever it might be, and getting that across in pinball, I think, is the second ingredient that is missing right now, and would go further than people might realize. Because when I say numbers, it sounds like, what are you talking about? Why nobody cares about numbers? I know people aren't absorbing numbers, but they care about numbers because it creates a story.
Absolutely. And it comes to mind too that also, like, this is somewhat unrelated, but you were talking about baseball, but like, the fields that involve these are also different from place to place. I think tennis is like that too. Like every tennis like court is like made of a different material. And I feel like there's an analog with pinball machines because the condition of pinball machines from place to place are very different. So like if anybody was to provide the argument, well, like, oh, well, games aren't the same everywhere, so it's not fair or whatever. It's just like, well, that's part of the skill of being able to perform at different locations on different, surfaces, at least in terms of sports in that matter,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So that's like the second ingredient. Now there is a third ingredient, but I hesitate to mention it and wonder if we should delay mentioning it while we go back to the first ingredient that you originally asked me this question that I meandered on.
Making pinball watchable.
Which is like making pinball watchable. Can we go back to that before even dare?
Sure. What are you gonna tease us with this third ingredient? What are you like, some sort of, man, that's cold.
That is cold. You're right.
Jesus.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Let's go back to that first ingredient then.
All right.
There's 5 things that happen at once for somebody who's watching pinball, right? Someone shoots it. There's a multi-ball that happens. It's got a stacked mode. There's a multiplier on it. There's 5 rules that occur from one shot. How do you even begin to break that down for this person that you're trying to make pinball watchable?
Right. So we agree that the goal is to make things watchable, and it's not a universal goal, but let's say we agree that that's a goal.
Sure.
So that means a few things, and it definitely means the things you're just asked about. But it means like my goal is to get viewers engaged with it. But I'm not doing that for primarily for the players, actually. So I'm going to call out when I think players do something wrong. I'm not going to say the standard commentary when they drain of, oh, they got an unlucky bounce there. Because that doesn't engage the audience and it doesn't provide the educational value that commentators in sports can bring. I want to explain to the best of my ability, why that drain happened and what the player could have done differently to avoid it. They went
Right.
for the spinner when they should have transferred to the other flipper and shot the scoop. You know what? They didn't hit the side of the cabinet on Black Knight when the ball was coming out of the right orbit, so it hit the top of the sling and it went to the left out lane. You can either say that or you can say unlucky bounce. And unlucky bounce doesn't engage people, is what I'd
No.
say. So
And it's not educational. You're not learning what's better about what could have been done.
right. So like the first thing I'd say is hey, be direct, about what you're seeing and what could have been done better. I'm thinking of the audience. I'm going to consistently look at chat, ask them questions and trivia, draw on the screen, explain what's going on in the game, go over the rules, switch to pinball related banter in between games, all of that. And that's because you want chat to be engaged not just in the moment while they're watching the stream, but when people watch it later, you can see that you are engaging with them. They want to watch the stream next time, and you ideally, by the way, a very small point, but you put the chat on the stream so that when you upload the video, people can see the chat that you were responding to along the way. It's like a small point that some people forget, but it is relevant. Just that's there. So you can try to like break down each of those individual things a little bit of what makes maybe more pinball watchable. And maybe can I name a few and maybe I'll pause and see if that makes sense as we go
Of
through.
course, fire away. I do want to point out too, Insanity Pinball just mentioned
Yeah.
that he's surprised how many newcomers think pinball is just luck. That's very true.
Right.
It's hard. It's frustrating to have to explain to people that the game is a complete control of physics, that it is not just like, pachinko or whatever, where you just plunge it and hope for the best.
Yeah, I do think it's a understandable need to protect players' feelings that you actually exaggerate how lucky it is.
Right.
Because you don't want to be players being streamed, and this isn't a national sport or anything. The players who know that they're going to be criticized, and yet like that doesn't grow the hobby, is what I'd say, or at least grow tournament pinball engagement from a wider audience. You want people watching to understand, wait, this is complicated, this does take skill. If they would have done that one thing, it would have prevented. I see what you're talking about now. And then the next player comes and does that thing and proves the point.
Right.
That is really what sells it. So I think it is like being critical is one of the qualities to make things watchable. That's what I believe. I have a digression there. Are you ready for a digression or no?
Let's do it.
I do a lot of
I've
digressions.
prepared my whole life
How
for
much
this
time?
digression. Let's do it.
Okay, good. I was going to do this, right? I had some feedback just this past few days that counters what I just said.
Oh,
Can I share the can I share the feedback with you? And I've
fire
taken it very
away.
seriously and trying to like think about it. And I'd love to know your opinion too on it,
Okay.
because I've been wrestling with it. And so I recently got some feedback from a player just this week. I'm going to withhold their name at their request, but I did ask them if I could discuss this feedback on this podcast here with you, Jeff, and they said sure.
Okay.
And I appreciated the sincerity that they brought this feedback with me. They said essentially I was being a jerk with my commentary. They were playing Iron Maiden, and they had a huge power jackpot ready to be collected at the lower left stand-up. Now, if you know Iron Maiden, you know that for better or worse, the power jackpot does not stick out from a gameplay perspective. It's often
Right.
the single most lucrative shot in the game at any point. But on the pro, it's collected at a measly little old stand-up. On the premium, it's a captive ball, but it's in the lower left. And the user
That's like
interface
right
does
where
tell you
the
the value.
pop entrance is, right? It's like
Exactly, right where the
yeah,
pop entrance. It's like a
skill
little
shot
stand-up on the
plunge.
pro.
Right.
Right. It's not like a huge light that's focused on this one shot that you have to
Mhm.
make. And there's on the UI on the display, they do tell you the value of the shot in the lower right of the display, but it's pretty small text and it just shows you the base value and the multiplier. So it doesn't even show you the big total sum you can get if you get that shot. So it's really not coded to be in your face, perhaps by design, I'd say, but they don't code it to be in your face. But anyway, I commentated that And as he was playing, he has this huge power jackpot lit right now that will win him the game. Do you think he knows about that, Kale? I don't know. It looks like he's going for other shots now. I don't think he knows about it, Kale. That's what I said. And then I circled the score on the display to make it clear to the viewer how much it was worth. And anyway, this player told me the other day, and this tournament was like months ago or whatever, but he told me that of course he knew that Power Jackpot was ready to be collected. He has the game at home. And his feedback really made me think, was I being a jerk? And should I alter my commentary going forward? Let me hear your reaction to that.
No. The answer is no. I mean, look, like there's a relationship between the player and the commentator that each one has a specific job, right? The player is there to play the best and do what they can for the game, right? They're focused on that. And you're there to both observe those rules based on what your observations are. You can't be in the player's head. So you're going to make the conversation that you can based on the information that you have. It's not like I would not be offended, even if I knew it and wasn't able to perform. Like that's still on me as an individual. And in the end, it's still just entertainment. It's just pinball. There's no reason to be butthurt about any of that whatsoever. I mean, think about commentators that are talking about sports related stuff. When someone like fumbles a ball or something, like heinously tear them apart. Like it's part of the entertainment experience because it creates drama that's not hurtful, right? Like you're not attacking the person's character. You're attacking the performance of the game, which is what your job is as a commentator.
I appreciate that answer. Can I pretend to be him and give you his two counters to that and see if that affects your
fire away? Was this actually you and you're just projecting?
I do have multiple personalities often battling in my head, and
okay.
I do have voices. But
you're like that M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie.
right. Don't ruin the spoiler for me.
Right.
But when he gave me this feedback, I did have a back and forth conversation with myself, arguing with myself. Like, I don't try to just say, well, he's wrong, and even if I conclude ultimately he is, I'm not sure. But kind of the back and forth arguments, I'll give you two. One is that, I think about that there's a tension sometimes between providing commentary that is most engaging to the viewer, which includes judging the players and the plays they make, versus not making the players feel bad by judging it. And that sometimes, because I'm so focused on entertainment for the viewer, I'm pulled towards judgment more than is reasonable. And then I think, maybe, is that a false premise? Is commentary versus the player's feelings, are they mutually exclusive?
But Serge, you're commentating his play. You're not saying this person kills cats. Like, you're not like, oh man, he doesn't know that stand-up's there, and I think he backed over a dog in the parking lot because he hates animals. Or she hates animals. Right. I'm not being specific. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's still part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, but he would say, like, I could have pointed out that the power jackpot shot is lit and the value it was worth, but without deciding that the player didn't realize it was there. On the other hand, maybe that wouldn't have been as interesting, without putting that frame of reference.
But also to be like advocate on this, like that shot isn't terribly easy to hit. They may have been fumbling hitting that shot repeatedly, so thought that there was a safer shot for them in the moment. And I think that's what a lot of the like post-game commentary in like actual sporting events is about, because sometimes there's stuff that's going on in a player's head that isn't, they're not mic'd up during the performance or during play.
No.
So, perhaps maybe the electric bat can do if there's players that want to have a quick chat after the broadcast to actually help focus, like I know that sometimes players sit down in the booth to talk about stuff, but to me, this is a conversation that should happen like live. And you're just like, hey, I noticed that you didn't go for that shot. Like, what was going through your head?
Right.
There's your conversation.
Right. I like that. Let me give you a second counter. Second counter to this would be, am I, me personally, Serge, good enough at pinball to be so critical of others? And he brought up Tom Brady. Like, when Tom Brady is commentating on a football game, he can be judgmental because he's one of the greatest players of all time. I'm not one of the greatest players of all time. I'm a good player, but I'm not one of the greatest players of all time. I know that, of course. Do I not have that right as a commentator because I'm not at the elite level to commentate on somebody who might even be better than me playing? What do you say to that counter, Jeff?
I mean, if I see a helicopter stuck in a tree, I know that it shouldn't be there. I don't need to be a certified FAA pilot.
Well, John Madden never played a single NFL game, right? He just had an injury.
I don't know a lot about football, so that's a bad question for Jeff.
I should shut up. You're right.
I mean, I guess my point is that there's things that are like very obviously like, okay, you shouldn't have drained. Like, anybody can make that commentary, right? But the commentary that you're making is at a level that is above that, right? You have a set of rules, knowledge, and a set of experience to be able to make criticism of that. And there are people that base their entire career on analysis and can't perform, right? There are commentators that are so well versed in the knowledge and performance of what a thing is and what it should be, but physically can't do it. So, but that doesn't mean that their opinion is not, invalid.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. So I'm gonna still chew on his feedback, but I like hearing all the different perspectives on it. And that was my digression into, is watchable? Because you asked me, and we should go back to it. Is just talking about like how to make pinball watchable, and I wrestled with the feedback I got that maybe I'm making it too watchable, by kind of having that tension between.
Here's what I'll say as somebody who is growing in the social media stuff, and you as well. There are so many people that are going to have opinions on what you should and shouldn't be doing, and that the best thing you can do is to be true to yourself, because the reason that people respect you as a commentator is because you have been doing it your way. And it's always important to take people's feelings into account, but as soon as you check the box that you weren't hurting their character, game over. It's you do you, and you should only do you.
Got it. Cool. Well, I'm happy to go back to answering your question. I swear. Do you want to? Should I?
Back to making pinball watchable. No.
Okay. The problem, I know.
No, but I mean, this is honestly the best part of this is what I find is interesting about the podcast. I could give a shit about the questions that I've came up with. It's to spark discussion about things. And I knew and was hoping that you would bring other things about what is it like being a commentator, because I feel people that are interested in commentating probably don't think about, hey, am I going to potentially hurt somebody's feelings that is playing a game based on something I've said? And there's a lot of things you don't think about when you start doing a thing that don't pop up until they actually happen, especially when it comes to politics and people that, pinball people have feelings, and they certainly, love to share that. So,
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think every commentator should say what their religion is and who they voted for last election. No, I'm kidding.
Sure.
All right, so to make pinball watchable, okay. Criteria 1 is production. Production is really important. I want one rig focused on the game. I think more rigs, with dual rigs, triple rigs, distracts and doesn't let people focus on what's going on. Clear, high definition cameras on the playfield, the score, the player, and the commentators. And yes, that means that streaming pinball is hard and expensive compared to other Twitch or YouTube streamers with one camera and one screen share. And that's really why I'm so appreciative of what Kale does to achieve such great production. But you need production. Fair?
So what about people that are interested in getting into commentary but don't have the access to this stuff? Do they go to an arcade and participate in the stuff that is already there and available to them?
Yeah, one of the nicest things, like my dream is, some people dream of like, within pinball, I mean, of like they want to play and win Indisc. Like I want to commentate at Indisc. That's like my dream. It's a pretty lowly dream. But I was talking to Carl, the other day, not the other day, when we spoke with him last on our podcast. And I was like, oh boy, I'd love to do commentary. He's like, yeah, just show up. Like it's not a big deal. You could so to answer your question is just, you go to tournaments. People aren't jumping in the booth necessarily to do commentary, and tournaments are happening because pinball tournaments are crazy. They're happening for like 4 days over a long weekend from Thursday onwards, and like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever.
I have heard stories of people jumping on commentary just because they want to be on the screen and they want to be commentating. I should put the caveat that if you are interested in doing commentary at a location, you need to ask them. You cannot just sit down in front of the camera and start talking.
Well said. Right. Ask Carl or the person who's running.
Right. Well, not Carl. Carl's the meanest person on the planet. Don't ever talk to Carl.
Right.
Carl is a horrible, mean person.
Right. And with pinball streaming tournaments on these events for so long, there is typically ample opportunity, if you're not a jerk, to just go and ask them. So go ask them. They're already producing it for you, which is great. The second thing I would say after production is drawing on the screen. It seems like a small thing, but it's not done nearly enough. And, like we were saying earlier, pinball is very dense. I've seen great, deeply knowledgeable players do commentary before, and they'll say something like, he should go for the plunge to the M lane to bounce it into the candy cane or whatever.
What's an N lane? What's the Mecha Godzilla shot for a new player? They have no idea what you're talking about.
No idea. They'll assume everyone watching knows what the heck they're talking about. So always be drawing. And that's one thing that's tough about the high level elite players when they do commentary is they often don't do that, and
Right.
because they're talking to their other elite players, including in the booth and who are watching, and I get that, but that doesn't
But
make it
this is the
watchable to as
problem
many
about
people.
making pinball available to people is that everybody lives in the bubble. Like most pinball
Right.
creators and pinball people are talking to other pinball people. And that's, you're never going to break out of that cycle without helping to bring other people in. I'm sorry, YouTube, there's a gentleman named Fate, or maybe not gentleman, gentlewoman named Fate Creator that has a really awesome sentence that I want to read to you that is about what we had just finished talking about. He says that you're allowed to make commentary and also not be right. You can't hold back because you may be wrong. And I think that that's a great premise for more than just pinball. But your intentions for your commentary are always pure, so you can't hold back.
Yeah, it all comes down to authenticity too. That if you're saying tough drain, they had a tough bounce, and that it was because they did X that led to that tough bounce or whatever, then you're not being authentic, I think.
Yeah. Pinball Degenerates talks about the telestration that you just mentioned, and also instant replay. Instant replay, an incredibly valuable tool to show people, the excitement of what moment that they may have just missed, or even not knowing a shot or not knowing what happened gives you the opportunity to talk about it after it occurred.
Instant replay is a great point. And by the way, we don't do as much instant replay. I don't think we figured it out, but we should do that. Kale, get on that if you're watching. Setting that up, but I agree. Instant replay is a great thing to have. I do actually, though. I will say one nuance point about instant replay. I don't like when the player is still playing and they show the instant replay. They don't do that in other sports. And they'll often show the live play field with the instant replay at the exact same time.
Yeah, I don't like that. It's overload at that point. Yeah, but I hear you about being able to play it at the same time. But you can't tell them to trap up just to show the moments.
No, just wait for them to drain. They will at some point, and then you say, while you're waiting for the next player to come up, that's a perfect opportunity to show that instant replay. Let's look at that again. What happened?
For sure.
If you missed it. So I would say wait for a downtime in the play before you show the instant replay. But I do think instant replay is very valuable. So production, drawing on the screen, instant replay. We mentioned earlier rules knowledge and how I do think that. I'm not expecting everyone to know every rule of every game. Not everyone can be as obsessive, but I do think that people often know when they're stepping into a booth, even what games are about to be streamed. Yeah. It's not a tremendous list. So you could do your research and kind of know, and you just have to know the broad strokes too, would be helpful. So that's kind of my fourth thing. And then maybe we're talking about watchable. I have a fifth thing. Is it okay if I rattle off a list?
Yeah, let's honestly, I forget what the list is, so I could probably use a refresher.
Good. Talk pinball between active play moments. So when pinball game is being played,
Critical.
When the game is being played itself, talk about pinball, right? But when it's not being played actively, talk about stuff that's related to pinball. Like, look at the game, look stuff up, have your laptop out, look stuff up. What year did the game come out? Who designed it? Who did the art? And if you don't have to memorize all this stuff, you just look it up on your phone, if you need to with each game, if you do it that way.
Or you could do a trivia question. If you were to come up with a trivia question just on the cusp, what would the trivia question be that you might ask?
I would say who was the first, here, I would say who was the first
this is the wrong one. I'm making a joke because you asked the same trivia question like every goddamn stream. You know which one I'm asking for. Say the damn question.
Yeah, you're right. I will do often I run into the same trivia questions over and over and over again. Which one's your favorite, Jeff?
Oh, you don't know which one I'm going for?
Oh, is it going to be, I remember this.
Let's ask chat right now. I remember. Come on.
Oh, man, what is Raven? No.
No. All right, I'll pretend to be Serge. Kale just drained. Well, chat, while we're waiting, let's talk about a trivia question. Who can name which games have a non-standard pinball in them?
Oh, non-standard pinball. I should have done it. I was ready. I was at the cusp of it. In games that don't have that have more than just the steel ball on the playfield or whatever, right?
Yep. It's a great trivia question. To be fair,
it's a good trivia question, right? So you got the ceramic ball in Twilight Zone and the gold.
Joe the Dragon just posted that in chat. Yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Twilight Zone. We've got. Wait, does Bon Jovi have a ceramic in the thing that the spinner that goes up?
My Bon Jovi does. It is not standard, but it is very easy to replace. So, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And then there's giant games like Hercules and Mothership or whatever,
Cue
that
Ball
like
Wizard,
use
doesn't
a
that
cue
have
ball.
that giant ass
Cue ball wizard
ball?
has a giant cue
Circus
ball in
Voltaire,
there.
if you count
You could argue the
funny one.
Menagerie, Circus
Yeah.
Voltaire,
I mean, you could even go as
that
far
sort
as
of
like
thing.
Terminator 3 or like 300,
I
the old
won't.
EM.
Not on the backless. Not on the.
Well, you're not going to
Maybe.
count back.
All right,
What?
fine.
That's still a
All right,
ball and a
yeah.
pinball
But then
machine.
you
Where
could
you
count.
got to nitpick?
Yeah, I do like to nitpick. Then you could do like boy, now I almost messed it up. But Jungle Lord, yeah, where you have like it's a little bagatelle on the back glass that spells
Yep.
like Lord, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Jungle Lord's super fun.
All
I
right.
love that game.
But you're right. You're right. That is my most common trivia question. But every time you're on stream in the chat, Jeff, I try to think, oh, Jeff is here. I have to come up with new trivia questions, and and it's a good push.
I'm glad I could provoke that. To be fair, I think the non-standard pinball is probably one of the best trivia questions in pinball, just because it's simple to think about. It brings people to remember past games they've played. Like it's not something like, I don't know, name all Python Angelo games. It's just like
Right.
You can pull from memories without knowing a bunch of deep pinball knowledge in order to.
Right, and then it could also be like, yeah, it could also be like things that aren't exactly pinball deep, like name other Keanu Reeves games,
Right.
for example, like something that brings in pop culture into it and not just pinball. I think gets engaging, chat that way. And I've seen Dalton, I mentioned earlier, like he'll draw in between pinball games, he'll draw a layout and ask you to get up with the telestration and ask you to guess what layout it is. That is.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. That's kind of like people taking pictures of the underside of a play field and you have to guess like what game it is. That's another fun trivia thing.
Yeah, just things that engage the audience in between. What I don't want is that, like, I think that sometimes people will go and they'll talk about like what they had for lunch, while they're playing or whatever. And I'm sure I've been guilty of that too,
Right.
that way. But you try to make it 90+% about the game, or when they're not playing the game, still about pinball in general.
Sure.
And when you're just talking about like how you did on a game, or like what you ate for lunch, or what's the food cart like outside or whatever, a little bit of that, but I think people do it too much. They just don't talk about the game because
there's a
maybe they're not
tactfulness
interested
to
in the game.
filler and also making it like relevant to pinball.
And
But so we're
pinball
talking
has a lot
about
of filler.
banter, and we're in the booth,
Yeah.
right? And I can't not talk about your banter back and forth with Kale. I know we talked a little bit about Kale earlier. He's in the chat right now, so I was gonna make a joke about how you know all the rules and he doesn't, so that's great. So you can talk to him about it. But Kale is such a part of the liveliness of the show. He runs the soundboard for it. He's such an important part of the kind of like banter, but back and forth that makes the show fun. So what is it that makes two commentators work great together?
Odd couple works well. It's a formula that's tried and true in lots of media, and it works. And opposites attract sometimes. And Kale and I share a lot in common, like our love of conspiracy theories or whatever, and the fact that we think we're in a simulation. But it's also like he's a different person than me with a very different perspective to it. Of like he just goes up and hits lit shots and has a fun time. He does great color commentary. It is fun to be able to go deep into the rules, and then I know that he's not paying attention or listen to what I said. I love that. I think that is funny and comical.
I feel
right.
Kale is kind of like the physical analog for chat, right? Like he's kind of like the representative of the chat itself, whereas you are the like representative of the pinball machine itself.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it, and you need that role. Like I'm well aware that I could go too far and start saying things that I know people aren't paying deep attention to. But at the same time, I think that doesn't mean that that's not engaging. Like I don't need people to memorize what I say. I think people appreciate hearing that there is so much complexity going on, and that they could, if they so choose, try to learn that complexity or whatever. But then they could also be Kale, and they could just say like interesting and hit the lit shots. And what did you say again? I'm not asking you what did you say again. I'm saying that.
Oh, right. I was like, what? Do you have a favorite moment that happened at the arcade with you and Kale commentating that you can think of off the top of your head?
Oh boy. What a good. I don't know. I'm gonna think about that. One of my favorite moments was just like I love excellent play, so I just think about like once Walt Wood was playing, and he literally hit the crate and Scared Stiff during a multi-ball. He literally hit it over 50 times. We counted it, and just counting the number of times he was doing it, like that just doesn't make sense how that's possible to do. So the excitement generated while that's happening, I think, is one of my favorite moments. But
there is a little bit of luck to pinball, but controlling that luck is really where it comes in. 50
some people
times.
have
I mean,
a
it's an easy shot to
preternatural.
hit, but holy shit.
But the shot's easy to hit, but it's the feedback that was the key. That because you're
Oh,
you're
okay. So
controlling two balls
it
at
was
once.
through, not
Anyone can
ricocheting
hit.
off the
I can
locked
make
door.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I can make the let's say you're in crate multi-ball and scared stiff. I can make that shot anytime, and we all can generally to make it's right up the middle, it's in the bozo zone.
sure.
But it fires the ball back in an unpredictable way, such that how is it possible to get the ball back on your flipper over 50 times to make that easy shot? So the shot's easy. Sometimes in pinball, the shot's hard. And the feed is back is easy, but sometimes it's the opposite. And in
Yeah.
that game, scared stiff, the shot is easy and the feedback is hard. It's unreliable. It is random to an extent, and so you have to predict where the ball is going. And he has a preternatural sense of where the ball, an instinctive sense of where the ball is going to go, so that when the ball is fired back out of the crate, that he is nudging the game because he knows where the ball is going to bounce.
Yeah.
And that's what makes pinball not look like luck when somebody can do that.
And those are those nuances that I just think that people that are new to pinball don't see and don't understand, and they need a commentator to point that out. No Fear's shot kind of reminds it. It's a kind of, I think, a similar kind of shot to that, where it's like fairly easy to hit, but the return to that upper flipper is
Timing
is different a little bit every shot.
Right.
So you gotta
You
gotta compensate.
Right. A lot of people can make it 3 times, but if you make it 50 times, there's something impressive in your inner metronome, and that's actually worth commentating on when you see somebody do that.
Absolutely.
And so moments like that are my favorite. But probably, one thing about Kale and I is we both really love pinball. We just love different aspects of it, that way. And so I think it's having that mix, and that makes for good moments, I hope.
Do you ever go back and watch your commentary in order to improve or see how you spoke about something in order to kind of shape the craft?
Never once. And that's
Interesting.
because I don't want to hear myself or do anything like that. I don't,
Okay, so it's
maybe
more of a
that's more probably psychological
personal
reasons,
got it.
than like self-improvement. You're probably frankly right that it would lead to self-improvement, that way. It's hard to argue that point. I'm not willing to take that mental journey. That's what I would tell you. For me, it's just like I'll put it out there and I'm not going to look at it again. And I do watch sometimes the clips that Kale will take long streams that themselves get like a good amount of views, but then he'll make clips of it that get like millions of views or hundreds of thousands of views or whatever. And so I do watch that because I'm like the analyst in me is curious about like, how is he doing that? What's he doing to how does he make them into something so watchable? But generally I don't like watch the streams back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I thought for sure you would have, because you're so natural at it. It's just who you are, man.
Oh, you're too kind. But
so now I'm at
sorry.
the ESPN section, but we kind of already talked about that. I guess who do you think should be? I have an answer for this, but who do you think should be the representative if ESPN had like a regular pinball like broadcast? How would they format it? Right? What's the location? Like, of course, outside of like, oh, it should be at the Electric Bat and it should be Serge, which I agree with. That it should be at the Electric Bat and it should be Serge. Maybe
like
not regularly, but as a traveling
arrogant.
show, how should this be done?
So what I think it should be done is, first of all, the things we mentioned, the commentating, the telestrating, the production in the ways that I said, the showing the chat engagement. I know ESPN is like a channel, and so maybe there isn't chat engagement there, right? But show the best players. That sounds like an obvious thing to do, but show the best players being the best at what they do. People will always prefer to go to a Major League Baseball game over a minor league game. That might hurt the minor league players' feelings to say that, but it's just true. And if your goal is to make all the players feel important, then by all means stream them. But that isn't what the average audience wants to see. They want to see Johannes or Jason Zeller or Keith Elwin. They want to see them destroy a game against other great players every single time. Sometimes I know, like, when people are streaming tournaments, they'll be like, "Oh, we streamed these players enough. Let's go to like these other players that don't get as much attention."
They don't put T-ball in the Olympics for a reason,
And that's a noble goal, frankly. I get that goal. It's just not the goal to make it most watchable.
I guess.
Right, exactly. You need to have people who love the thing they're doing, right? The people who are doing the commentary, that it's a good rule in life, not just in pinball, right? It's hard for everyone to love their job. I know sometimes you just got to make money however you can, but if you're choosing to stream pinball, don't hate on the thing you're doing. Never say how bad the game is. Oh, if they pick this game, that's going to be so boring. I'm sure I've been guilty on that once or twice. If they pick Jackpot, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, but even terrible games are fascinating to watch in a tournament setting. And in fact, I think the best time to play games that are generally unliked is during a tournament. you know?
That's right. That's right. And see how they handle it, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have streamers saying like how much they hate the game or the layout or the rules or the gameplay or the theme. And like, I'm quite sure I'm being a hypocrite here, but I just say that I, love the thing you're doing, be passionate about it, have somebody who's passionate about it, have them telestrate, show the best players, show the commentator cam as well. Because you need that engagement, especially on ESPN. The idea of on streaming on ESPN or putting on ESPN is that that the audience has no idea what's going on. That's a key thing there. And so this isn't inside baseball, at that point. It is explaining what does the tilt bob do, and how
Right.
does that work? What do dangers do? And it's explaining why pinball is skillful very much, but it isn't, but it is doing that, through explanation, through drawing. It's not just saying, he has to plunge to the M lane and then he'll have his multi-ball lid on the candy cane shot or whatever it is. Like it has to actually be drawing on it and saying if he plunges perfectly to here, the ball will go there, and the plunger has these tick marks, and you could see that he's carefully pulling down to those tick marks, and a lot of
Yeah.
people wouldn't have ever known that. So I mean, it means things like that. It is commentating on the game, but commentating knowing your audience when you go on to like something broader like ESPN or something like that.
So, but
I
I
don't know if
guess,
was that directed towards your answer? I don't know.
yeah, for sure. But I'm trying to think like for a lot of sports broadcasts these days, like they don't go over the rules of the game for when people are watching. And I think that this is obvious because the game's been around for forever. They know they have a fan base.
Correct.
Pinball's not in that department, even a little bit, right? So I just like I struggle with what the right formula is to try to help it launch as a thing that can be watched and be exciting. And somebody in chat
Yeah.
mentioned esports as an example. And clearly they followed everything you're talking about in terms of, showing the best players, making sure it's engaging to watch, drawing on the screen. The tools in a lot of these games are set up specifically so that they can display the game in its best light to try to get people into it.
Yeah, a few things I'll say is like pinball has deeper game rules than almost any other type of esport hobby or
That's
whatever.
what literally Joe the Dragon just said that.
Perfect. And,
Yeah.
and that's what, frankly, that's what attracted me and probably some other players to it too. Not everyone is as like Kale isn't as deep into the rules, but like for me, I love how deep the rules and the rabbit hole goes because like
Sure.
I am that player of complicated board games and things. And when I learned later in life that pinball has these complicated rules, I was like, oh my gosh, I never knew that,
Yep.
And so I got into it. But I get that could be a challenge for like a wider audience. So what I think is where I was mentioning before when it comes to the kind of knowing all the rules, there's rules, there's strategy, and their tactics. And I think you forego talking about with a wider audience. You forego talking as much about the rules, certainly not while they're playing, and you focus more deeper, specifically on the tactics. The
Right.
player is trying to do this, and here's how you could tell their progress in doing this thing. On Metallica and Sparky, there are little inserts that show you how close you are to the multi-ball. I want you to pay attention to that because that's what they're going to be focused on doing. I don't have to talk about how they're getting to blackened, by like ball 3, which is getting all the
Sure.
multi-balls or whatever. But I do have to say, like, the tactics are they're going to be going for this multi-ball. You're going to see the progress here. So the goal is how can they trap the ball in the flipper, and you're going to see them use different techniques of how they're going to trap the ball in the flipper. Or in like Black Knight, let's focus on the technique. This is a right flipper heavy game because you often want to backhand these shots, and I'll circle them. So the goal of the game, the strategy of the game, quite often boils down to how well can you trap on the right flipper. So here's the ways they're going to try it, and I want you to see how well they're all doing on that goal. And so
Yeah.
you make it more narrowly focused, but don't avoid the complexity. Just narrowly focus on the complexity.
And pinball also has a kind of a similarity game to game for especially modern games in terms of like, there's always going to be a multi-ball. Usually you have to lock multiple balls. So there's like synergies that people can, once they understand like, oh, when you shoot Sparky, it's going to essentially virtually lock the ball until you start it. Well, other games probably have something similar to that. So once you've watched a broadcast of a pinball machine, you can kind of get the idea of how other mechanics work if you are being given the information like you were describing it.
Jeff, I have a trivia question for you in the chat.
Oh boy.
A real
It's
live
time, chat. Are you ready?
question. How can I not, right? So we have a question from the chat on Twitch I see here that says, could there be a way to highlight that expected next shot or something along those lines in a visual way to help guide the viewer? What pinball game already tells you what the most valuable shot is coming up? And there's one game that actually tells you directionally, this is the most valuable shot at any one time. How about that for a trivia question? And now we can continue on. You don't have to answer it, Jeff, but I will.
Well,
We have to do
I
any trivia
mean,
question.
dang, I don't know. There's a game that specifically highlights the most
Correct.
valuable shot.
ZZ Top. ZZ Top has gotten it in the
Oh,
chat.
I
It
see. I've
is
never
Jersey
played
Jack
Pirates of the
Pirates.
Caribbean. I've only seen it
Yeah.
played. I don't feel like
So
paying
it has a little
$30,000 for a
compass.
pinball machine.
Yeah. It has a compass at the apron. And they were doing interactive aprons like a while ago that way. And so it has a compass that points with an arrow at what the most valuable shot is that way. And a lot of
No
people don't
way.
even notice
That's
that it's there.
but that's very on theme as well,
Innovative.
because if you're familiar with the films, he's got
Yeah.
the compass that like leads to like the
Knows where to
most
go.
important thing for him. So yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. Oh man,
Yeah. All right.
Eric,
That was my little
good
aside for the
design
trivia.
idea if that was yours.
Right. I know maybe it's not such a hot take to say this, but like Eric is absolutely one of the best designers in pinball, has always been one of the best designers in pinball since the beginning. And I don't and I'm sure I wouldn't say he's underrated, people know him as to be a great designer, but I think he's like in the top 3 of all time designers.
I love Eric's layouts. I just don't like the rules for JJP
Of
games.
course. Right. And that's the nuance too. I know this is a big
Godfather's
digression
layout's
to what
super
the goal was.
interesting, but oh my
Correct.
god, the
Correct.
code.
Correct.
Oh
I
my
don't like
god.
the theme of Godfather, and I don't like the code. I heavily dislike it. I don't like the lighting because it's like rainbow on a Godfather game, which makes no sense. The theme doesn't make sense for pinball. All of that is true, but if you were able to mentally divorce yourself from all of that and you just looked at the layout, it's an incredible layout that
Yeah,
way.
totally.
And obviously Harry Potter is like one of the best layouts of all time. Pirates is just about one of the top 3 wide bodies ever made, of a layout. And the
Yeah.
only one you could say that is like not a lovable layout is Guns N' Roses. But I would counter back, and it's not fun to play. But I would counter back that he was designing it to be an experience as much an interactive concert game layout. And it is the most theme immersive layout
I think it's a
of
very
that kind.
interesting layout. I just don't think it's super fun.
Right. I don't enjoy it.
Right.
I don't enjoy it. But I think he had a goal and he achieved that goal, is what I'm saying. Anyway,
I really like, I'm going to throw Sidon in there too. I really like Avatar's layout. I know that I'm going to probably catch some heat for this, but I think that game has been a little underappreciated overall, but oh well.
I like this. I like the playfield on top, and I don't like the lower playfield.
There are a lot of lower playfields. The crab battle is not super engaging and very easy to scam, but that's a problem with like I'm a person who loves mini playfields, but there is like a huge gap
Hard to make
in
them
a
fun.
good mini playfield and a really bad mini playfield. Like for
What's your
example,
favorite
I
mini
think
playfields?
my favorite one,
Yeah.
oof. Can I pick 3?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Shadow has one of the best physical skill-based mini playfields with the
That's the
like
right answer.
essentially breakout concept, right?
That's actually the number 1 answer. But keep going. Sorry.
I think
agree.
Jaws has one of the best single moment opportunity like playfields, right? Like you have essentially one shot to do it. It's similar to JJP's Harry Potter one, but you can easily spam the Harry Potter one. You can't really with Jaws. Jaws is like you either rip the reel or maybe you get the ramp and that was your moment. It's like blow your load, hopefully you get it. And then I have to throw Twilight Zone in there just because I think that it's one of the better utilized Magnaflip concepts, even though most games don't, they're not tuned in. But like if you clean your playfield and it's nice and new and whatnot, it's a very satisfying, challenging game to get the skill shot on that.
Right. I also think it's a different question if we're talking about whether it is that upper playfield or whatever extra playfield is well connected to the rest of the layout, or is it set apart? So, for example, Munsters or ACDC, the lower playfield, those are set apart. Like you drain and it comes back on the standard playfield, but it is set apart. Or like Black Hole has a lower playfield, underneath it. It's like it's its own thing. And Shadow is its own thing. Jaws has an upper playfield that feels just flowy into the game. Like maybe that's a little bit semantic, but
it takes a dump onto the regular playfield in so many different ways that it feels like it really feels like a separate moment in a good way.
Right, like Harry Potter Quidditch, like that upper playfield is like one of the best upper playfields to me, absolutely, without question. It's just a part of the game. It's like going in there, it's coming out, as opposed to something like Stewie on Family Guy or the Shrek one, where it's like now it's another playfield, but it really has nothing to do with the rest of the playfield. Does that make sense?
that and Monsters is like, in my
Right.
opinion, where tiny ball
Yeah,
doesn't
Champions
equate
Pub
to
jump rope.
satisfying
That's a main
physics.
playfield.
What's that?
Right. Yeah, Champion Pub we have in chat was saying they have like does the punching bag and the jump rope. Yeah, those count as interesting mini playfields. That's for
Yeah.
sure. And those become,
I think there's also, you want to talk about hot take, right? Let me see if you agree with this, right? I think there's
okay.
games that have upper playfields incorporated into the street level scenario. And I will use King Kong as an example of this. I think that
I think
the
you're
upper
right.
left flipper, drop target, Kong letter scenario is essentially an upper playfield that is integrated into the regular playfield so that you can experience that moment as a single entity.
Right.
Todd in
X-Men is a
chat
lower
mentioned
play- is
Grand
a-
Lizard as well,
Yeah.
except that one's, as an owner or previous owner of Grand Lizard, is not nearly as satisfying.
Right. Right, but no, I agree with you. You could have like you said, that is in King Kong. It's its own playfield area that can be accessed, and maybe the Uncanny X-Men has it in the lower left and can be accessed. Bon Jovi has it with that outlane flipper in a sense. You know, it's its own mini area
For
that
sure.
you don't always get to play in. You know, but
Yeah.
when you do, it's fun.
Nuclear Black says that his name's not Todd, but spoilers for him, the YouTube has a Todd that beat you to that question.
Jeff, did I take us too much off our path?
No way, man. We're on a journey together. It's like we're going through the Wizard of Oz and we're holding hands because I need that hand. You got to hold my hand, please. Captain Booty
Also,
Tickle wants to know
I
what
never
your
asked you.
favorite
Oh,
multi-ball
sorry.
is and why.
I am a fan of, so from like a rules perspective, a design perspective, I want the multi-ball to not be a give me. So you have to earn it. Therefore, I hate like Guns N' Roses code, you know, where you plunge and you're in a multi-ball or whatever. So one should earn it. And then I'll say like it should announce itself in some fantastical way. I prefer multi-balls that start with a staging area in some way that traps the ball so that you could experience what's going on. The classic one that people would refer to is like Addams Family Showtime. You know, you have to hit it, you have to hit that shot into the chair, and then once you do, it's the gameplay stops and you get to appreciate what's going on in the game.
Sure.
Subsequent games that followed that include like Seance Multi-Ball, which I'm sure you took inspiration from there, I imagine, from Addams
Yep.
Family, stuff like that. Or Metallica Sparky is another one there. Like, so a moment.
Can I give you a leak? This is my first time ever giving a hot leak. So you played Bon Jovi, right? Can I tell you there's a moment that's going to come to that for the beginning of Living on a Prayer now?
Really?
It's going to have a hold build up moment that's coming.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it's super cool.
I talk on the podcast I do with Kale. We do deep dives of rules for games, and we talk about a lot of criteria of what makes a good rule set. And it comes down to like 10 different criteria in my mind, at least, of what makes a good rule set. But really, the number one we always start with is moments, because ignore everything about breadth and depth and clarity and all these other things. A cool moment is what it's all about. 90% of it, I think.
I think that technology has taken away from pinball moments because
You're right.
A lot of like the best, you talk about Showtime from Addams Family and whatnot. Like a lot of these like pinball moments, they just didn't have the mechs and stuff and the screen to kind of default to. So they had that built into the experience. And there's just something about that generation of pinball designer that it just got lost as modern games kept being developed. Not to say they don't exist. Like Godzilla has a fantastic one. Like that's got to be one of the best like multi-ball drops in a modern game. But yeah, I miss that. I try to bring that to the games that I work on as best I can, but I totally hear you on that.
And the thing I would add too is like, there's a misconception that you need a complicated mech to create a moment in pinball. It helps, certainly.
I completely agree. You don't need that shit.
Drops in premium. Addams Family doesn't have that. It has a scoop. That's it.
You don't need a giant budget to make a great film, right? It's the synergy of the music, the light show, a physical mech if there is one, the timing of it. The choreograph is like such an important part of the pinball moment that I think isn't a term that's used enough, right? Like if you have, like imagine Showtime if like you shot the shot, it fired the ball out, you were in multi-ball, and then the ramp happened and it said Showtime in the middle of the ramp up. Like all of this shit just happened like randomly as it was occurring. It ruins the moment. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah, I think that does happen. I know maybe I won't name names or whatever here, but like I think rules designers have focused on other criteria that are important in pinball,
Sure.
to breadth and depth and mini wizard modes and everything, and things that I care about too, but at the expense of thinking like choreography for moments. That's so much more attention should go into that. And I think that if anything, a lot of now, because of the depth of code in games, it could allow opportunity for even more moments in a game. As opposed to like Adam's Family, it's that one big moment, kind of thing, that multi showtime, and it's a great moment. There are other smaller ones or whatever, like the thing flips and other things like that. But like you could, like with modern code, there's opportunity for like 100 moments in a game, and I think you should give it to players. I think that would sell games too.
Yes and no. I think there's something about choosing the moment to have the game have like that thing.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying there can't be multiple moments, but there is a tactfulness on focusing the energy and creating such a big, unique thing that happens, and not just so many that they start to become like forgettable. But while
sorry, you go.
No, I was going to move on to something else that needs to be in games, because if there are any designers watching my podcast, we got to start pushing the industry towards this. And I feel like there's a really important one, but go ahead. I'll remember mine.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree with you that you don't want to overload moments, but that's why the first thing I mentioned about moments is you have to earn it. It doesn't feel special if you don't earn it. And it shouldn't be every game. You don't get the multi-ball in Adam's Family every game. When you do, you feel it. You get you figure out how you got it. You don't get it every game, and it feels like a moment. So what I would say is, I think there are opportunity for more moments, but as long as you earn them, then it's not just handing out like candy. Like if you plunge and you get a multi-ball, that's not a moment. That's an anti-moment even.
I can think of a game that has an anti-moment for sure, and is a kind of a lead into what I think needs to be in more pinball. So we'll do this. Okay. I'm going to apologize to the people that are fans of this game, but I think that the D&D Dragon multi-ball is the anti-moment. Like it is so easy to lock and start that dragon, and then it just dumps so many balls at you that it's just like, what I think needs to come back for more of games is the 2-ball multi-ball. And we've seen it start to kind of pop up in games. The 2-ball multi-ball is the holy grail of multi-balls, right? You can control it. It's usually you work for it. It's an interstitial multi-ball that happens before some sort of big payoff multi-ball. But the illusion of getting 6 balls at once is just to fuck with you so that you end up draining half the balls and you're down to 3 balls or 2 balls anyways. So like tactful 2-ball multi-balls is where it's at. Fight me.
I'm going to start. I'm actually going to start by. I'm going to hold off on the D&D specifically because there is some fight in there I would give. But the larger point about lesser is more, is absolutely true when it comes to multi-balls. I think when you have, and I think it means so many things. It means how many balls are being fired, how long the ball save is going on. A minute ball save is like it's an anti-moment. It doesn't matter what you do. It's how many jackpots are lit. So if I'm in Stranger Things and all my jackpots are lit, that's not fun. That's my claim. It's not.
For sure.
I get you have to hit enough of them to like the super jackpot, and then you get the super jackpot, which by the way isn't worth much. And maybe that's my next point to say is like it has to actually be worth enough.
But this is where code really shines in games because, for example, using your every shot is lit jackpot thing, right? That at face value, not interesting, right? But if you modify the rule where every jackpot's lit and they're all worth very little, and as you start hitting them and there's less shots, they start to become more and more valuable. Now you're using code to create a incentivized player interaction. And I think that's where...
Excellent point.
But you have talked about this on your own podcast on Pin Pals. Shout out to Pin Pals.
Well, that's why I told you it's an excellent point, by the way.
But we've talked about how code can save a game that has bad code, but geometry cannot be changed. And I think that's, you have gone on record saying that code is like the soul of a game. And I firmly agree with you on that.
I would much rather play a bad layout with great code than a great layout with bad code. And to give it more specific, I think we once talked about this, but like give it more specifics, is Tales of the Arabian Nights. Like that is a great layout. I have nothing bad to say about that layout.
Well, really Carl would disagree. He freaking hates that game. I don't know.
But does he hate the layout? That's what I'm curious
about. Yes, he hates the layout. He thinks that the shots are garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was going to call you out. You got to give an example of both. Okay, so if Totan is your argument that it's a great layout but bad code, and it's very linear, the game is not satisfying at all. in terms
Yeah,
of
I would
code.
agree with Carl that I don't want to play that game but for me it's primarily because the code isn't there. I find it beautiful. I find the lights good. I find sounds great. I think that it has some that fun ramp that is swirly and kind of diverts to different places. But I respect his point and he knows what he's
All
talking
right,
about.
so what's the opposite?
The but that
What's a
code.
shitty layout that has great code?
It's 100% Star Wars: Fall of the Empire. Sorry
Oh, really?
to not
Okay.
to Ray Day, but I am sorry to John Borg. But I would say, like for me, it's not a shitty layout to me because it is a fan layout. It's a shitty layout because it's a shitty layout. And what I what I mean by that is that like I don't mind fan layouts. I can name lots of fun fan layouts. So you have a fan layout, a little bit. I'll go on a rant. You have a fan layout, which is like not terribly hard. I'm not a designer, but it's not the hardest thing. It's been done before. You can use other examples that have done it. Pokemon is a fun fan layout, as an example, but with that code, but whatever, or shallow code. But then you have with Star Wars, you have the Death Star shot, which is like it was rejecting from day one, and so like setting up first of all a shot that rejects from day one is not fun to me. Like it's a fan layout and you're rejecting shots. That's a little crazy.
Man,
Number one.
when I went to the Stern Media Day, the first thing I came back, because I don't like being on camera talking about a game. I don't think anybody should talk about a game seeing good or bad after like a couple of hours of playing it. I think it's just not authentic to the experience of pinball ship, right? It feels like marketing bullshit.
By the way, Pinball Nerds says Totan is as fun as a two-ball multi-ball. He says there should be more balls in multi-ball. I actually am gonna agree with him and say that I don't mind. I'm not talking about 15-ball. Three-ball multi-ball is fine, and even four-ball is cool where you could like try to trap them and that's fun. What I am arguing for is that not everything should be lit and easy in that multi-ball. There shouldn't be a minute ball save. It should, like all those sort of things by default. And I know you could change a lot of these things in the settings,
Sure.
but nobody ever does because they want to play the game the way it was meant to be designed. But anyway, back to Star Wars. I would say.
Yeah, but I was talking about how the rejection on this thing. I was like, this is a problem. Like, this is like clearly a mechanical issue that should be addressed. And like, Facebook was just like, what the fuck you're talking about? I'm like, okay. And of course, like it was a legitimate issue. And like to Stern's defense, there were 3 things that were causing it. They totally fixed it and sent out a new mechanic that'll like the first early run games that had it. And it seems, I mean, we've played a bunch over on Tilt, and I haven't seen it really reject any more than like a shot that normally rejects from pinball,
Right. I'm going to add a second point to that shot, though. When it doesn't reject, is it a fun shot? That's my question to you.
It's fun when it shoots them all out at you, but feeding it into it is less fun. It's more fun to hit the hyperspace ramp, in my opinion.
Here's the hot take is the obvious take is, hey, they should have made a shot that works. That's the obvious take. The hot take is that shot isn't fun when it does work. That's the hot take is what I'm saying. You can't backhand it, really. You can. Some people can on their individual copies. I've seen like Tom Graff do it or whatever. But you can't. A lot of copies you can't backhand it, and otherwise you're hitting a brick wall and it bounces back because you have to hit the target down or whatever. Like I don't know that that's a fun shot anyway. Is my hot take.
Can I make a second? Don't put this in a pinball machine. Hot take that since we're talking about that.
Okay.
Stop putting toilet bowls in fucking pinball machines. I don't want to watch the ball spin in circles like I'm playing fucking like I'm taking a poop in my toilet, watching it go down.
I had that as my third point about why it's a bad layout, which is toilet bowls aren't fun.
They're not.
Spinning cups are not fun. It's been done a few times and been barely fun in other games. Like in Creature, it's actually. Right.
But this is way more important than pinball analysis because Enzo lives in Australia and I need to know if you hit that shot, does it go the other way? Because you're below the equator. Why are you laughing like that?
Because you hit it from the left. Whatever. All right. Good question. Then.
I'm so sorry to have interrupted you for that terrible joke. Okay. Anyway, so that's your third thing that shouldn't be in a pinball machine. What is your second thing?
By the way, I want to stress that I enjoy Star Wars: Fall of the Empire because of Ray Day's code. I think it's amazing code, but I think the layout is not good.
Absolutely.
So the spinning cup, it's not fun. It can be made fun-ish in games like Creature because it's not used on every shot, where you only have it in the multi-ball, and it's helping to actually build the value of your jackpot, so you feel connected to trying to move it around. You don't feel connected trying to move it around as much.
What the concept of the toilet bowl is to delay the ball in multi-ball, I would imagine, right? Like you're using it to help slow down the feed of balls, right? But it's the mode start.
Pirates.
No, my pianos aren't more interesting. Get out of here.
Jersey
It's the mode
Pirates
start, which sucks.
A good toilet bowl. right that way. Yeah, it's the mode. It's exactly. It's the mode start, which sucks. You're hitting it a lot. I don't know. It's just not fun. That was my third point. My second point would be on the premium. And I'm not going to talk about the ball save. That's kind of fun and interesting. Whatever, people have different ways of how they like to engage with it, and whether they think it's implemented right. But what I mean is, on the premium, it has a ramp that you pay extra for the ramp to go down and for you to hit a dead end. And I don't believe that's fun in pinball. That's insane. Actually, that's insane. It was done in Rush too. And I give the difference, if I may, and I swear you're not paying me for this, David.
There's some dead end shots that are fun in pinball. I'm going to disagree with you on that, but
well, look, you take Bon Jovi, you take the Bon Jovi layout or whatever, which is that, and it's a great design choice.
There's no dead end in Bon Jovi.
There's no dead end in Bon Jovi. There's no dead end except the magnet hits the ball and brings it down. Whatever, like there's other things, but in the heart shot, you hit that shot, it goes through, it goes around, or it raises it up on a ramp that hits it. It doesn't go to a dead end and falls back down. And I don't like, and you think about like Led Zeppelin had that on the Pro had a dead end and the Premium had a side ramp or whatever. And but you go to Star Wars and now you're paying extra for a dead end. And I just like that's just not, it's just not a fun design idea. It is cool to loop a ramp on the hyper ramp. It's not cool to hit a dead end. It never will be ish. There are some. Yes, yeah, I could say there are exceptions. Like there's a super jackpot shot in Iron Maiden where it's with the upper flipper on the left and you hit a dead end. Like, yeah, that's cool. So there are ways to do it. I shouldn't be like so binary about it. I'm just saying a straight up the middle shot that hits a dead end is not fun. I
can't argue with that. You put the easiest shot on a game and you have it just hit a flat stand up at the
easiest
end.
shot, center shot in the game, and it hits a dead end. No, I think that's just wrong. I don't think that's right. Maybe I'm curious if people disagree with me there. Like, is that fun for people on Rush Premium, let's say, or Star Wars Premium? Where just like center shots up the dead end are fun. Fire dead ends.
You know what would have been
funnish.
What would have been an easy fix is just like a little one of these right inside there. So when it goes down, you shoot it up the middle. You have a chance of it immediately looping back down the right or looping back down the left, and you can't really see it. So it gives an element of just like more diversity to the shots, and it would immediately give more value to it than the Pro. And it gives a validation for what the ramp is supposed to or can do by going up and down. But Joe is threatening my friendship with him if I like fire. I don't really like fire, so I guess our friendship is safe.
Yeah, strategic dead end is what it's all about. I'm just thinking of Chad. Like if up the middle, no. Do
you consider a dead end with a saucer on it, like a mode start on Shadow is like that? Indiana Jones con shot.
No, that's not. Okay. Those feel differently. Absolutely. I mean, Star Trek, you hit in the left scoop or you go into the flipper. Like there are other shots where that stops. I'm not against the staging area for a ball, I'm just and there should be stand-ups in a game. You could argue every stand-up is a dead end, right? But I'm saying an actual designed shot where the ball follows up, guides up to ending at a dead end that's up the middle on a 2-flipper game is not good. That's that. Like if I could maybe be that specific, that's just not good. Am I too aggressive? I don't know.
It's poetry. I can't argue that. I just don't like fan layouts to begin with. So I was never in the camp for potentially liking that game. But what you said earlier, and as we have been critical on the game from a layout perspective, I do really want to reiterate that. And people have saying this left and right. I'm sure that there's more to the team than just Ray Day, but that Star Wars is so fun. It's so fucking fun. And it is because of the code. Right. So
I'm able to divide myself mentally with what I just said and also saying I enjoy playing Star Wars. And my whole point was, before I went on my rant of why I hate the Star Wars layout, which I do on Fall of the Empire, is I was pointing it out that I'd say I'd still rather play that over something like Tales of the Arabian Nights, because a bad layout with great code is a great game. Yeah, that's what I still, or a very good game, if not a great game.
Man, people are making fun of Raven now that you're bringing up bad layouts. Some people have no taste, no taste.
So maybe time
Captain Booty Tickled wants to know if you have a favorite mech.
I'm going to take off. I'm going to take off the shirt to put on the Raven shirt. 1 second.
Oh, okay. But you have the Raven shirt on. It's hiding. You're taking one Raven shirt off for another.
You know what? I was getting hot anyway, Jeff. So,
it's going to turn into that kind of a stream. Welcome to Dirty Pool Podcast and Foot Fetish stream. Let's fucking go.
You don't want to know the hair shirt I have on underneath this one.
You should get Kale to do a shirt that's just like your hairy chest, and you could like put it on and experience being the Serge.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Captain Booty wants to know what your favorite mech is. Do you have a favorite mech in pinball?
Yeah, I mean, let me think about it. I think about it in different ways. I like, um, you know what? This is going to sound, I swear, this is going to sound self-serving, but I like, not because I'm on your podcast or whatever. I think the Dune Worm and the Heart in Bon Jovi are two of the greatest individual mechs in all of pinball. And I'm going to give an objective reason to explain why.
I appreciate that. I think I know what your reasoning is, but I do want you to refer to the worm as can of beans because Kale called it that.
Right.
And I would love for you to be talking about how it's one of the best mechs that you like while calling it can of beans.
Right. Now, if Kale were here, and I'm going to just say, so you don't make me like just sound like I'm singing praises or whatever, Kale would say, but does it work all the time? And is it going to break or whatever? So I want to tell you how I'm going to answer this, the perspective I'm going to answer it. I'm not answering it as
fire away.
I'm not answering it as a pinball tech and how to does it need to be fixed or anything like that. If I were, I might give you like I wouldn't say anything by spooky because it might break in servos and all these other things like that.
Pinball is hard. Pinball is hard.
So to be, like I want to be careful with my words to say it's specifically as a player who's playing a game that has a working mech, playing as it intended to play.
Okay, so your can of beans is working, and
can of beans, and then the heart shot in Bon Jovi, and I would actually give it more to the heart over the can of beans. In a sense, they do similar things. They have multiple phase state changes. By that I mean you hit the shot one time, it does this. You hit a shot another time, it does that. And so, like in the can of beans, worm in Dune, it can be a bash toy because it can go up and you could hit it. It can be a magnet that traps the ball. It can be, it can just do nothing and the shot goes through and goes up a ramp on the other side. It can trap the ball and eat the ball. It can take the ball and raise it up. It could drop it off on a ramp. So it's doing like several things that. So the answer to me comes down to a combination of what has a wow factor and what has enough phase state changes to it that have kinetic satisfaction.
Yeah.
And so that's why to me, like objectively, it's one of the better mechs in pinball. I would take you take the Dragon mech in Dungeons and Dragons, which Kale and I do a yearly Pin Pals Awards where we're like, what's the best mech in pinball versus what are the overall best mechs in a game in pinball. And Kale's point was Dungeons and Dragons is the winner from last year, and I was going to say that Dune's mech was the winner from last year.
Yeah, I would have to disagree with Kale on the basis that the Dragon mech is literally just a VUC. That mech already exists.
No,
it's a VUC with a hood on it, and they just put a dragon head on it.
Now wait, no, but no, where it works, and this isn't a binary. I'm not going to make it binary. It is an awesome mech. The reason it's an awesome mech is it shoots the balls fine, but it also can block shots. It can put its head down. You could have to hit it. It could go block a shot on the stand-ups. Sure. It could block a shot on the left orbit. So it does something similar in the sense of phase state changes, and it is a great mech.
Its theme integration is really good. Like it looks like a really cool dragon head, whereas the worm has a can of beans mentality.
Correct.
Like you can't argue that.
The dragon looks like a dragon, and the worm doesn't quite look like a worm.
Right.
And that's that. To the Bon Jovi mech, the reason I think it's so cool, it has the phase state changes of it's a magnet that could trap a ball. And damn it, Phil, if you're watching this, you better code it so it traps the ball in a magnet, and then you could hit the ball. I hope he figures that out like Lord of the Rings does. It's a great thing in Lord of the Rings. It would. I mean,
it's such an easy thing to code. I can say that there's other things that they're working on for making the heart do other things, but it's fairly simple already in line with what it is doing, which is a lot of things, and it does them very well. It's super reliable. It grabs the ball, it takes it up, it reveals a pit. Like I'm shocked at how versatile that mech is.
It's really versatile, right? And there's somebody saying in chat too is that one of their favorite pins has a busted mech in it and it breaks the game. And so that's an important thing to say is that I said earlier, I'm not judging this as a pinball tech or an operator. I'm judging it as a player that's playing a working game. And then of course you'd have to say Medieval Madness, which is arguably the simplest of all mechs that you could imagine in people's top.
Are you talking about the castle?
Because it's just like a servo that moves around, and it just moves around three.
It's more simple than that. It's a solenoid that fires up into a plate, and the plate has different mounting points for each of the different castle dongs. And then when the plate pushes up, they fall over, and then when the plate goes down, it pulls them back up. It's great.
Right. I am on board with people in chat saying D&D Dragon is a great mech. I'm not a hater of that mech. It's a great mech. It's one of the
I,
better mechs of all time, even.
I'm not
I know
saying it's not a good
you're
mech.
not as much.
I think that the multi-ball moment of just having lots of balls doesn't make it a good moment. But I do think that the mech is, I think it's oversized personally. And I think that it is a modification. It's not innovation. It's just like they put a hinge on the ramp so that it could move around while it was firing. But again, it is in the top of mechs that have come out in the last like 10 or 15
Top of
years.
mechs.
For sure. Top of
Right.
mechs.
But what makes Medieval Madness so great is it's theme integrated. It's a wow moment when the castle falls. You have to earn that moment to
Right.
activate the mech by shooting up. And it's a lot of phase state changes. There's the moat, there's the drawbridge, there's the gate, that you have to bash down. And so it feels different.
And there's like a
when you shoot it
nuclear
than
giant bomb hole after you blow up a castle for no reason. I love it. Like that's the kind of
Right.
pinball logic we need.
Yeah, exactly. So and they get the call outs and the choreography right and everything. So in conclusion, I would say Medieval Madness, Dune, the Worm, the Bon Jovi Heart is better than I think it should get a lot of credit for how impressive it is. Because it's phase state changes. Now, I've also said before, like differentiating, because I like to go down rabbit holes or whatever. You asked me what the single best mech is, and also Godzilla is another example, a great mech with the tower that goes up and down. That should be one of them too. But the other thing I would say is like, what games have the overall best mechs in them? Where not one mech is particularly amazing, but there's overall a lot going on. And I think Evil Dead is one of them, where I wouldn't say there's any one mech in Evil Dead. Well, like you got to see when it does this thing, when the head of Linda turns around to show you good Linda, bad evil Linda, or whatever. But it has that. It has a lower playfield. It has a trap door that opens and shuts.
Multiple trap doors. There's the one you can go in, and there's the two bash ones.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a little cassette player that moves around. There is a cabin that swings the balls out, And when I mentioned, and then there's the hand, of course, that goes back and forth. Sorry for this motion, but there's a hand that goes back and forth that you could hit. And thank you, Jeff. And that there are all those mechs. If I were like any one of those mechs, I think is beaten by the Medieval Madness Castle or the Can of Beans Worm or the Heart mech or whatever. But having the overall amount of what's going on in there makes it by mechs one of the best games I think that has been made.
Pinball MC, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Also, a followed up question. He says, should machines be easier for personal streaming for better expansion of pinball players or something else? Interesting concept. I never thought about, like, should manufacturers sell like a streaming rig, something that like either attaches to the game that's more simplified, to make for an easier streaming thing? I feel like this is a rabbit hole of manufacturers don't want to go down that at all.
Well, although I would say they're not going to go down that because we're already in a niche hobby and they're trying to make sales and they don't want to add to the bomb of it. But what I would say is they could do some things in the software to make it easier. And I know you've thought about that too, like how to stream a game like Bon Jovi so it doesn't get the DMCA taken care of or whatever, or just having an easier way to feed out the score cam, into, in some manufacturers have done that at different times better than others.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that. So I think you can do things without trying to build in an easy way to put a rig on the game.
Having to buy secondary components in order to get streaming to happen instead of just cables that you have lying around would be, I don't know, probably my top thing. But this is still a process. I think that streaming is fairly, not new, but like the amount of streamers that have popped up in the last like couple of years versus the guys who have been doing it, like Anonymous is like one of the first guys, and like Laser Lost comes to mind, even Cliff, and the original Papa stuff is like from decades ago, Bowen and
that's how I learned a lot.
Keith and his brother obviously doing the original Papa stuff. Yeah. So it's clearly been available for a while and manufacturers haven't made it easier for people to do that. But now there's almost a change of relationship between manufacturer and home buyer and streamer now, as opposed to like just distributor and manufacturer. What would you say about that?
Do you mean that like who are they selling to? Who are they designing for kind of thing?
Like both. Like, yes, the home market is taken over as like the larger portion of it. And now how many of the home market are also streaming their games, whether it's because they are an operator at an arcade or because they have their own personal collection that they want to stream.
Yeah, I definitely do. But it comes back to what I said. What I said earlier, like pinball will grow by getting better themes and getting people to buy them at homes with better code for them and stuff like that. But what I think really grows the hobby is can potentially grow the hobby tremendously is making competitive pinball more interesting to a wider audience. And
Yes.
I don't, I know that manufacturers are not always thinking about that because they have to be thinking about the sale, which in the end is 70% or more is, depending on the manufacturers, going to home buyers. But eventually, what popularizes it in the larger community of America and the world is actually tournament pinball. That's what I believe.
Do you know why I believe that the manufacturers haven't pushed for individual, like, as tournaments as a way to sell more games?
I'd like to hear it. I'm not sure.
I believe that the manufacturers don't do that because growing pinball as a whole does not guarantee that their particular pinball machines will be the ones that are purchased.
You think so? I think that they want they I there's some times where a rising tide lifts all ships and sometimes it doesn't. I think that
Sure.
actually this is a case where it does, where a rising tide does actually lift all ships in pinball. That's me
But
personally.
Stern has their Stern Army, I believe it must be requirements for distributors to have launch parties because you don't see launch parties being popped up for a lot of other manufacturers, right? And I mean, a lot of that could be just
Mhm.
because Stern has a huge market of, games and they are excellent location games. A lot of distributors put them on location because they are reliable games. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But, I think the time and investment that would have to go into help building that doesn't equate to like guaranteed sales. We
Mhm.
gotta get a marketing person on here because that's what they're gonna want to talk about, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Like I know I have my lane that I'm an ex that I that I fancy myself an amateur expert on, if you will. Just code and stuff. And I love talking about the marketing side of hobby. Like I know like Canada does that a lot and everything. And I like listening to it too, like the marketing side of things. But I'm no expert. I wouldn't say that I am. I do think in the end, no matter how I never try to lose, when it comes to marketing at least, I never lose sight of no matter how much I care deeply about code and I do and the rules and how that is the soul of the game. The number one way to sell a game is through a theme. That's just it.
Yeah.
That's the number one best way to sell a game is the theme. And rules are one of the last ways to sell a game, widely, at least in the industry today, in the way
Which
it's for
ironically, I
home
think
buyers.
that the rules dictate the longevity of a game, whereas the IP is the most short term.
Correct.
You know, it's the honeymoon phase is the theme, and the wedding period is the rules and the code.
Right. And me personally, I'm not buying a game unless it has great rules depth. That way.
Truth.
And good rules.
Um,
Mhm.
Serge, I have a handful of last questions that I want to ask you. And I want to say
Oh,
thank you. This
shoot.
is one of the
Let's hear it.
longest podcasts we've had, and I have been captivated the entire time. I want to thank Chad. I hope everybody is appreciated. Serge is a hard sell on the podcast. It took me quite a while and a lot of foot videos to try to get Serge on here, but we finally got him. Thank you, Serge.
Yeah. Well, I'll say also that Enzo is in the chat, and check out his channel on YouTube. Shout out to Enzo and Gonzo and all that. But he had asked me too, and I told him no, and that was like a year ago, because I like never wanted to do an interview actually. But you asked me first, Jeff, and it took
Yeah,
a year to
fuck
pull
you,
together.
Enzo. I asked him first. um, all right, last questions. Here we go. What game do you know better than any other game?
I'm going to give my first answer that jumped in my head, and it's going to be ridiculous. This answer is Pirates of the Caribbean, Jersey Jack. It's a ridiculous answer because it is the largest amount of rules in the game, but it was the first game I ever bought. I didn't buy it when it was $30,000 or whatever. I bought it when it came out and nobody was buying it, apparently. And I saw it and I loved it because I loved what Keith Johnson did on Lord of the Rings. And I loved Eric Minier's first layout there. I thought it was ambitious and crazy and impressive. So it was actually the first game I ever bought, well under 10K back then. And then it had a rule sheet like we were talking about earlier, and I printed it out and I laminated it and I bought like a real super nerd. And when I got the game and I like put it right next to the game and I memorized it, and then I played the game and I learned like every character and every multi-ball and every rule of it, to like until I and that was the first game. That was the first game that I learned every rule of. And still, so to me, even though it's ridiculously complicated, I suppose an easier answer would be like a classic game like Strikes and Spares or
No, I
something, or
love
Eight
this.
Ball. Like I know, I know,
Can you
100%
be
of
my
it.
lifeline, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style, if I'm ever in a tournament and I have to play Pirates of the Caribbean?
100%, absolutely, right. Bad tournament game, of course, because it makes you pick characters and you can't pick the same
Yeah.
character and all that.
Venom has an issue with that too, because a lot of people log in and then they get advantages and stuff. But the
Yeah.
Smones wants to know what FTE is. That's Fall of the Empire. That's Stern's latest Star Wars game. I have some other questions, but chat's kind of blowing up with questions. This is your last opportunity. Serge will never do another podcast and will never be on Enzo's podcast.
Most likely.
So make sure that you get them out now. Doug wants to know what's the first game.
Another one, it would have to be Enzo first, is what I'm saying.
What's the first game you remember playing? Pinball, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. So for me, I didn't grow up playing pinball. I didn't know how deep it was. I am the type of person, I need to play a game of some kind every day my entire life since I was like 3 years old. I need to play something, like if it's like a Ken math puzzle or a crossword or I don't know, Settlers Con Risks, whatever it would be. But but so it was a few years ago, and I was thinking about, like, we got a new place and putting like a pinball machine in it or something interesting. So I looked up pinball on my phone some randomly, and I went to this arcade. And when I walked into the arcade, it happened to be a Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. And I walked in, and there were like 50 people there playing a tournament, the league night there. And this was run back then by Tracy Lindbergh. Shout out to Tracy Lindbergh, also, who I really appreciate as a good pinball friend. And so I went in and I was like, what's going on here? Why are all these people here? And then I got involved and I started playing. So the first time I played actually at pinball in like my life, basically, maybe when I was 5 at an arcade somewhere, but the first time I played was at like an arcade and a league night there. And I'm pretty sure actually I played Harlem Globetrotters, which they had on route there at Tilt. Great game.
I love that game. That's a great game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love games
board
with
games.
spinners.
I see. I'm going to ask you some chat questions. Is that
yeah,
right?
I'm going to do a rapid fire of chat questions, but we're going to go back to one of mine.
Okay. Okay, good. It's your stream, right, Chef?
I mean, sure. Chat for the live versions, it's kind of all of our stream, but yeah. All right, what's the most obscure rule you've ever known that suddenly became like extremely important for a tournament?
Oh boy, what a good question. I like that. Wait. I'm going to think about it. Man, I want to wait. Do I have give me like a 10-second shot clock here or something?
Sure.
Okay, my brain goes to Venom, and that is after you get the multi-ball, the main multi-ball, which is like Mayhem multi-ball. Like, how possible is it to get it again? After that. And the answer is it's not very possible, but because you have to like go through and defeat you can go through like a villain or whatever, but like whatever they're called, battle. But yeah, I'd say that because like it's an all or nothing. The answer is any game that has an all or nothing to it and having to coordinate everything you do on that one all or nothing. A lot of pinball games don't. In fact, most pinball code doesn't rely on an all or nothing moment where you have to, like in a symphony, stack everything at the same time. Right. But some games do. I tend not to like those games for what it's worth. But
you don't like Bram Stoker's Dracula? That's one of my favorite examples of that.
Do you know why I like it? Because you're right that you have to stack everything to get the high score. But the part you're wrong at is that you don't have to get it the first time. Let's say I get a multi-ball in that, and I don't bring in the second and the third multi-ball in Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's okay. I could do it again later on.
Yeah, you're not crippled for being able to do it again in the future.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah, those are fine. That's fine. What I'm saying is it's a symphony, and you get like one shot at that symphony, like those games. And there are a few of those games, and for me, they're like all uniformly bad that way. Or like I would say suboptimal code rules. So Venom is one of those for me because you get one shot at the mayhem combined with the carnage, and you better get 2x playfield by locking 3 balls on the right canister because that gets you to 2x playfield. So like, I guess my answer to your question is specifically Venom and the nuance of multi-ball in Venom. How do you maximize that value? Because you're only going to get one chance at it. If you screw it up, you're not going to get the second, statistically speaking.
Right. Okay, you ready for your rapid fire?
Yes.
Single word answer only, Serge. Do you accept these rules?
Okay.
Serge?
I do, but I'm very bad at single. Yes.
One word answer, or 2 if it requires that. You ready?
Agree.
Serge, will you support a company that only focuses on making code for all games?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite classic?
Flash Gordon.
Favorite board game?
Two. Carcassonne.
Favorite horror movie?
Drag Me to Hell. That's a random one.
Highest score you've ever had on a game?
Oh, Obsession. Sorry, I turn it back. Obsession.
Okay, okay. I haven't seen that yet. No spoilers.
Right. Obsession.
Highest score you've had in a game? Very specific.
30 billion Johnny Mnemonic.
All right, all right. And then if you could have any of these classic games in your collection, which of these three would you pick? Raven, Raven, or Raven?
Raven.
Which one?
Third.
Everybody picks the second. That's crazy. Fine, you've broken the cycle. Thank God. I was really worried about that.
I would say something, but you only told me one word.
That's true. That's true. But you're freed from that now. Those questions are over. I have two last questions for you, and then we're going to send it off to you to plug anything you'd like, and we'll wrap this up. This one kind of harkens back to the whole purpose of this entire podcast, which is being a commentator. If somebody wants to be a good tournament commentator, what are three things that you would tell them to focus on?
Draw on screen. No rules. Always be talking about the game.
That's a great synopsis too, because this like perfectly encapsulates what we've been talking about for, well, at least when we were talking about commentating. So there you go. If you're excited, and don't be afraid. I'm going to add a fourth one. Don't be afraid to get on there and talk, because you can't do the first three if you're too afraid to do it.
Right. And I agree with what chat says. Like, stop talking about what you ate in the parking lot.
Yes.
Right. It's amazing how common that is, actually. It sounds very specific, but it's incredibly frequent that people do that.
Yes. Which is surprising. Unless the food is really good. Right. If you're at like a convention and you're wanting to talk about the really good food that's in the area, this is good knowledge for people to be able to go get food that is also in the area. Like at TPF, man, oh my good Lord, that barbecue place that we drove to was unbelievably delicious. Holy crap. I can't remember the name.
Like,
I'm sure someone in chat will know.
One or two, a while ago at Electric Bat, they used to have these great people that would make food there at the Electric Bat, and they don't make the food there anymore. And it's still okay food, but they would make this great food, and sometimes they'd bring it on stream, and we would like eat it on camera or whatever, and it sometimes turned into like a mukbang podcast or whatever you call those. Is that the right word? Maybe? Or I said a terrible word. I don't remember. But yeah, it's not about the food at a pinball stream. That's what I'm trying to say. Generally
Unless
food.
it is.
Unless it is. And then
unless it is. Okay.
Right.
And the last question, Serge. I need you to tell me what percentage of your brain is filled with pinball rules.
Is it a one-word answer, or can I give a longer answer?
No, you can. We're done with the
okay, let me riff a little bit. Well, before I give you that answer, I'll say like I go deep on pinball rules, but I could be remarkably stupid in some ways, and I think we all can. But I know I can. Like one time, I was with my like sister and brother, and I was talking to them about this deodorant I bought. And I'm like, it's just not giving me the protection I need, And then they looked at it, and I had kept the plastic cap on the top of it, that comes that you're supposed to take off. And I had just been using it for like 2 weeks like that. And I'm like, this thing isn't working. This is terrible deodorant.
That's amazing.
And I wanted to share that story before giving you the answer, to say that that one thing I've learned about, and one thing I've learned about myself in my life, and just about all of us, is everyone's an idiot, including me. We're all very stupid. We know very little about anything. And sometimes we can know I know 1% about something, and other people know like 0.5%. But other times it's the reverse. But either way, it's still very low, is what I'm trying to say. So as a percentage goes, I think we're all stupid. And sometimes we're smarter than others in individual things. But generally speaking, we're all pretty stupid, especially myself. I make lots of dumb mistakes. Now I'll go back to your question. When I am into talking about pinball, like here or on a stream or whatever, I get into some sort of trance-like state where I'm 100% focused on pinball. That way it might be like it's all of my brain is focused on it. And I do this sometimes. That happens with me when I'm working, or some other things I do that I'm into, where like I get into a trance-like state, and I could do it for 100 hours without stopping that way. It's a weird thing to say, and it almost sounds like an impossible exaggeration. But when I was doing like tutoring a long time ago, and I was writing up notes for how to do well on LSATs or some other random tests like that, like I would go like 60 hours of just writing up stuff, and I would turn around and it would be like 60 hours had gone by. So when I'm into it, it's like near 100%.
All right.
That's my full answer to your question.
A fluctuating number. I love that. Garrett says it's all about flow state. I totally agree. Serge, you are a humble man, a gentleman, and an absolute gift to the pinball community. Thank you for spending your time here with me today. I truly appreciate it. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everybody else. Normally we do a plug. I guess plug the bat, but is there anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jeff, and thank you for having me on today. And I enjoyed it, despite not doing it for a year. I've enjoyed it now, and I appreciate that. I don't care about plugging anything for myself. I have nothing you have to go to. I make no money on streams and don't intend to. If you give tips or whatever, but you should.
Nobody streaming pinball makes any money streaming.
Right. And I never intend to. There's no Patreon or anything. I don't. I just watch Electric Bat Arcade channel. I like what Kale and Rachel do. I think they're the heart of America and the small business that is turning into a larger business, and they're doing it so right. And maybe they'll take me out for sushi if you guys are nice to them. So maybe that's my plug. But just watch what they do, and I'll be on there sometimes. I'm a cog in their operation.
There you go. I forgot this was something I started doing a couple of episodes ago. Is a shout out of somebody that is maybe not known in the pinball community, somebody doing something interesting in pinball that you could give a call out or shout out to, so that people are more aware of it, or them.
I saw it on here earlier from the chatter who had reached me out on. I love the people who reach out on like Discord through Electric Bat, and they have like just so many interesting people. There's like somebody, I don't want to blow up his spot, but he's making a homebrew game, like showing me all the rules and things. I'll let him talk about it when he's ready, and it looks really, really cool. But another person who reached out to me that was in this chat was Pinprof, Pinprof, and they just made an app, like an iPhone app, and you could download it and it's free, and it has like rules and stuff on it. And so shout out to him, and I appreciate that he's been willing to put so much work into developing something like that.
Awesome. Pinprof, check it out. And shout out Jamie Birchall's here. What's up, Jamie? Good to see you. Kale's still here. I will say, do the due diligence. Please share pinball social media stuff. It doesn't have to be mine. Just if you see pinball content that you think is interesting, like it. The engagement really helps drive the algorithm, and we're talking about growing pinball. It's an important thing to do. Just do it. Don't be a lazy shit. It's one tap of a fucking button, and you put it on your story. Don't be a bitch.
And check out Kale's Instagram. Check out Kale's Instagram, Electric Bat Arcade channel, and just marvel at how he somehow made tournament clips get millions of views.
It's really impressive. It's almost as impressive. Be sure to check him out on Foot Finder as well. Kale has a fantastic Foot Finder account, one of the best looking feet in pinball. All praise the Great Pyramid, everybody. Serge, throw it up. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And we'll be back. See you, everybody.
Does your life lack purpose? Have you wondered if there's anything more? Join the cult of pinball. The Great Pyramid accepts all into the cult of the Great Order. I am Dr. Cornelius Bigostin, imperturber and acolyte of the Great Pyramid.
Join us on an ever-ending quest
to spread the joy of pinball.